Chapter 794. The latest chapter of this book is not finished yet. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. Novels are updated faster. Millions of novels are free to read. Novels with content that can't be found on the internet are available here. Today, Zhang Dequan came to inquire about Shang Guanyan's condition. According to the plan, Xiaoheng told Zhang Dequan that Shang Guanyan woke up for a while during the day and fell asleep again in the afternoon. Zhang Dequan was overjoyed when he heard this and hurried back to the palace to report the good news of Shang Guanyan to the king. When Wang Xian and the other 4 people in the palace heard that Shang Guanyan woke up, they couldn't help but panic. Originally, they still had a glimmer of hope, thinking that Shang Guanyan was just scaring them and wouldn't really dare to perish together with them. But now, Shang Guanyan's awakening was undoubtedly the last wake-up call for them. They must find something that could move Shang Guanyan as soon as possible and redeem their weakness in Shang Guanyan's hands. At night, after little Jing Kong was bathed by his bad brother-in-law, he climbed onto the bed and fell asleep after jumping twice in dissatisfaction. Gu Jiao and Xiaoheng had a discussion. Little Jing Kong was now his little follower, so it was best for him to stay with him. After Shang Guanyan recovered enough to return to the palace, he would find an excuse to take little Jing Kong to live in the Duke's mansion. I said, let's go to Uncle's house and stay for a few days. Anyway, the Emperor's grandson didn't have many months left to live. His last wish would be fulfilled by the king. Gu Jiao felt that it was feasible. After the two finished talking, they went to her grandaunt's place. Gu Jiao had originally planned to pack up her great-aunt's things, but who knew that she would see her great-aunt sitting on the chair with her legs crossed and eating melon seeds. The old chancellor had a bundle in each of his hands. Everything is packed, let's go. Gu Jiao's mouth twitched. You are too self-conscious as a son-in-law. The Han family even had their eyes on Martial Aunt Nan. Songlan Women's Academy's Miss Gu was no longer safe. Gu Jiao called Gu Qingfeng and went to the Duke's mansion in the carriage. And Guoping usually slept early, but tonight, in order to wait for the 2 elders, he forced himself to stay awake until now. Gu Jiao didn't say much about her identity. She only said that her real name was Gu Jiao, and that she was from the Zhao kingdom. She didn't mention anything about the Marquis's daughter, or the Protector Commandery princess. As for Empress Dowager Zhuang and the old chancellor, she only said that they were her great-aunt and son-in-law. Guogong was a noble in Shangguan, but since he cared about Gu Jiao, he would respect Gu Jiao's elders. The carriage stopped at the gate of Maple Courtyard. Duken's gaze was fixed on the carriage. When Gu Jiao jumped down from the carriage, the entire night seemed to be lit up by his gaze. It was a kind of steadiness and joy that came from looking forward to seeing their child. Empress Dowager Zhuang glanced at him and was carried off the carriage by Gu Jiao. The old chancellor went down by himself. Empress Dowager Zhuang, Jiao Jiao, you're so thick-skinned. Go by yourself. Butler Zheng pushed Guogong to the 2 elders with a smile. Hello, old Master Hua and old Madam Hua. Guogong rode on the armrest. Please forgive me for not being able to welcome you personally. Gu Jiao said to her great-aunt. Duke said that he welcomes you very much. Empress Dowager Zhuang glanced at her. I don't need you to translate. The little girl's heart was biased. Gu Jiao said to Guogong. Great-aunt is very satisfied with you. Empress Dowager Zhuang's mouth twitched. How could she see that she was satisfied? You're siding with an outsider a little too quickly. Humph. Empress Dowager Zhuang snorted and walked into the courtyard with a strong aura. Gu Jiao took the bag from the old chancellor and sent her great-aunt to the decorated room. Great-aunt, what do you think of Duke? Empress Dowager Zhuang said expressionlessly. You didn't ask me at that time. How about Lulang? Gu Jiao blinked. The melons are cut. I'll go get them. She flashed out of the room. Empress Dowager Zhuang was angry and amused. She muttered carelessly. He looks better than your father in Lord Protector's manner. Great-aunt. Great-uncle. It was Gu Yan's excited roar. Empress Dowager Zhuang had just secretly taken out a candied fruit. She was so scared that her hand shook, and she almost dropped the candied fruit. Gu Yan, you've changed. You weren't so noisy before. After more than 3 months, Gu Yan and Gu Xiaoshan finally saw their great-aunt and son-in-law again. Both of them were very happy. But when they smelled the unconcealable smell of medicine and wine on the two elders, their eyes dimmed again. Are you hurt? Gu Yan asked. Empress Dowager Zhuang waved her hand carelessly. It was raining that day. I fell. It's okay. It was very painful to fall at such an old age. Gu Yan's eyes were slightly red. Gu Xiaoshan lowered his head and wiped his eyes. Okay. Aren't you fine? Empress Dowager Zhuang couldn't bear to see the two children suffer. She pulled Gu Yan's lapel. Let me see your wound. I don't have a wound. Gu Yan raised his small chin and said. Empress Dowager Zhuang really didn't see a wound on his chest. She frowned. Didn't you have an operation? Was it to coax you? Gu Yan's eyes flashed and he fell into Empress Dowager Zhuang's arms exaggeratedly. Yes, I haven't had an operation yet. I'm so weak. My heart hurts. My heart disease is acting up again. Empress Dowager Zhuang slapped his forehead. She was sure that this boy was alive. It's here. Gu Xiaoshan pulled Gu Yan's right arm. The wound under the armpit is so small. He gestured with his fingertips. I applied scar cream. It's almost invisible. Empress Dowager Zhuang also wanted to see it. Gu Jiao and Dukan sat in the corridor to enjoy the cool air. Dukan couldn't turn his head, but he could feel the joy from the inside even if he could only hear the noise inside. After losing Xianyuanzi and Yinin, the East Mansion hadn't been so lively for a long time. Second Master Jing and Second Madam often brought the children to accompany him. But the liveliness didn't belong to him. He had been lonely for too long. It was so long that his heart was almost numb. It was so long that he didn't want to wake up after becoming a living dead. He wanted to die in the endless darkness countless times, but his silly younger brother invited famous doctors to extend his life countless times. Now he was very grateful to his younger brother, who never gave up. Gu Jiao looked and asked, Are you thinking about something? Yes. Dukan wrote. What are you thinking about? Gu Jiao asked. Dukan hesitated for a moment, but he still wrote truthfully. I'm thinking that you being by my side is like Yinin being by my side. That kind of feeling in the bottom of his heart was the same. Oh. Gu Jiao looked down. Dukan hurriedly wrote, Don't misunderstand. I'm not using you as Yinin's substitute. It's okay. Gu Jiao said. I can't tell you the truth now, because I still don't know where my fate lies. When everything is settled, I'll definitely tell you frankly. It was late at night. The two young men, Gu Yan and Gu Xiaoshan, weren't sleepy at all, but Dukan's great-aunt and son-in-law were having a headache from the noise. Especially Gu Yan. After recovering from his heart disease, his killing power was comparable to little Jing Kong's. Because they hadn't seen each other for a long time, he had a lot to say. He was even more talkative than little Jing Kong. Dukan's great-aunt slumped in the chair soullessly. She had misjudged the cold and taciturn little Yan, back then. It was time for Dukan to rest. He bid farewell to everyone and Gu Jiao pushed him back to his courtyard. Gu Jiao pushed the Duke along a quiet path. Behind her were Gu Yan and Gu Xiaoshuan's laughter. The night breeze was very gentle, and they felt very comfortable. When they arrived at Dukan's courtyard, Steward Zheng was talking to a guard. Steward Zheng nodded to the guard. I know. I'll tell the Duke. You can leave now. Yes. The guard cupped his fists and left. Steward Zheng paced back and forth at the door. When he was about to go to Feng Courtyard, he raised his head and saw that Dukan had returned. He hurriedly walked forward. Duke. Dukan asked him with his eyes, What happened? Steward Zheng didn't have any scruples because of Gu Jiao's presence. He said truthfully, The guard who escorted Mu Ru Xian has returned. This is Mu Ru Xian's handwritten letter. Dukan, please take a look. Gu Jiao took the letter. She opened it and placed it on Duke An's armrest. Steward Zheng hurriedly ran into the courtyard and took out a lantern to light it. The letter clearly stated that Mu Ru Xian wanted to return to the country by herself. She had already disturbed them enough during this period of time, so she didn't want to trouble the Duke's family anymore. The letter was very polite, but if she was sent away like this, it would be difficult to explain to the Duke. If something really happened to Mu Ru Xian, the Duke's family would be blamed for not treating her well. They actually let a weak girl leave the manor alone and get killed on the street. Thus, the guard followed her for a while, hoping to make sure she was all right before returning to report. Who knew that they would follow her to the Han family? She went in? Gu Jiao asked. Steward Zheng looked at Gu Jiao and said, "Young master, she went in. Our manners guard said that she stayed in the Han family for half an hour before coming out. She then returned to the inn, took her luggage, and brought her maids into the Han family. She hasn't come out yet." Gu Jiao said faintly, "It seems like she has a new thigh to rely on." Steward Zheng said, "I think so too. I heard that Han Shixi's leg was crippled. She might have gone to be a doctor for Han Shixi. This person is really..." In front of his little master, he swallowed the unpleasant words he was about to say. "Let her be," Gu Jiao said. With her medical skills, it was hard to say whether she could cure Han Yi. The Duke didn't care about Mu Ru Xian's whereabouts. He wrote, "Keep an eye out. There might be people coming to the manor to inquire about news." Steward Zheng's brain was very flexible. He immediately understood the Duke's meaning. "You think that Mu Ru Xian will inform the Han family? Say that the young master's family has moved into our manor? Don't worry. She won't be able to guess it. Even if she guessed it, I have a way to deal with it." The latest chapter of this book isn't finished yet. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. Novels are updated at a faster rate. Millions of novels can be read for free. Novels with connotations that can't be found online are all available here. https://www.zhhbqg.com/89642_896422826/106261050. HTML Genius memorized this website's address in a second. www.zhhbqg.com Bikuga mobile reading website. zhhbqg.com. Chapter 795. The latest chapter of this book is not finished yet. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. Novels are updated faster and more fully. Millions of novels are free to read. Novels with connotations that cannot be found on the internet are all available here. When Gu Jiao returned to Feng Courtyard after sending the Duke off, Gu Yan and Gu Xiaoshan were forced to take a bath by her great-aunt. Her great-aunt's brain was buzzing. She finally did not have any energy to see anyone else. She closed the door and went to take a bath. Her great-uncle returned to his room. It was obvious that he had gone to wash up. Only Gu Qingfeng's room door was left ajar. There was no sound coming from inside. Gu Jiao went up to take a look, puzzled. No one would believe it. Gu Qingfeng was wandering around the room like an idiot, admiring every table and chair in the room. His eyes were full of disbelief. It was like a curious baby entering a magical paradise. Gu Jiao was confused. "I know the Duke's residence is good, but you are the son of the Marquis. Your quality of life is not bad. Is there a need for this reaction?" A normal person would not disturb Gu Qingfeng at this moment. But Gu Jiao was not a normal person. She was not a normal person at all. She pushed open the door with a crash. Gu Qingfeng was shocked by this sudden movement. He did not have time to retract the novelty and intoxication on his face before a layer of awkwardness floated up. That was a silly expression that Gu Jiao would not forget even after 10 years. "What are you doing?" Gu Qingfeng came back to his senses. He straightened his expression and asked Gu Jiao angrily. Gu Jiao strode into the room. She looked at the furnishings in the room and then looked at the embarrassed Gu Qingfeng. "I should be the one asking you that. What are you doing?" Gu Qingfeng's eyes flashed. I can't just look around?" Gu Jiao hit the nail on the head. "Not only are you looking, you are also touching." Gu Qingfeng choked and retorted fiercely. "I'm not allowed to touch." Gu Jiao thought about it seriously. "That's not it." Gu Qingfeng secretly sighed. Gu Jiao continued to ask, "But why did you touch it? Do you have some weird fetish that no one knows about?" Gu Qingfeng exploded. "What do you mean by weird fetishes? What's wrong with touching it?" Gu Jiao thought about it seriously and concluded, "Not really." Gu Qingfeng took the initiative and said, "Why aren't you going back? Was it good to stay in her brother's room in the middle of the night? Do Do you think you're really a man just because you're dressed as a man? Gu Jiao frowns and corrects him. Don't be rude. Call me granduncle. Gu Qingfeng. You still haven't forgotten about becoming sworn brothers with my grandfather? I forgot all about it. Gu Qingfeng hurriedly pushed her out. All right, hurry back to your room. Aren't you going to the barracks in 2 days? If you don't rest well and go out looking listless, do you want others to laugh at you? After Gu Jiao left, Gu Qingfeng decisively closed the door and bolted it. Then he came to the table, looked at the small ornaments on the table, and let out a long sigh. Why was it like this? Because he didn't expect it. In Zhao country he had a home after all, and this feeling was not obvious. But after coming to Yan country, the loneliness of being in a foreign land was vividly displayed. When Gu Xiaoshan and Gu Yan lived with everyone else, he could only lie in the unfamiliar Tianxiang pavilion. He also felt lonely, sad and lonely. Later, when he went to the State Preceptor Hall, he replaced Xiao Heng to go to school at Kanglin Women's Academy. He could only hide in the dark. Even his elder brother could lie in his own intensive care unit, but he could only quietly sleep in a room that didn't belong to him. After leaving in the morning, he couldn't leave any trace of himself in the room. It was as if he had never been there. He was a shadow. Everyone's shadow, except for his own. He thought that this time, he would just hide in one of the rooms. But it turned out that was not the case. This room was for him, not for Kanglin Academy's Gu Jiao, not for Tianxiang Pavilion's Changjing, but for Gu Qingfeng. Suddenly, he had a sense of belonging that was seriously accepted, and no longer looked at this family as an outsider. As Gu Qingfeng thought about it, the rims of his eyes started to sting. Suddenly, Gu Jiao poked her small head in from outside the window. Gu Qingfeng. Gu Qingfeng's body shook, and he carelessly wiped his eyes. He didn't turn around and very coldly asked with his back to the window, "What are you doing?" Gu Jiao threw something over. He caught it with his hand, and it was a medicine bottle. "What is this?" he asked. Gu Jiao said, "Medicine, apply it once in the morning and once in the morning, apply it thinly." Gu Qingfeng was puzzled. "Why do I need to apply medicine?" Gu Jiao said, "The slave mark should have grown after so many days, and you can apply the medicine. If it hasn't fallen off in a month, you will have surgery." Gu Qingfeng's heart was fiercely rubbed again. So this girl remembers, she remembers everything. Damn it. Damn tears. It doesn't listen to me anymore. It wants to rebel. I can't stop it anymore. Gu Jiao left after giving him the medicine. But she quickly turned back and poked her head in to ask, "But why did you touch it just now?" Gu Qingfeng's tears beat the gong to retreat. Damn girl, is there no end to this? 2 days later, Gu Jiao rode the Black Wind King to the army camp. The Horse King was also brought along. It was almost 3 years old, and it was time for it to receive training. The other Black Wind cavalry started training when they were young, and it was considered late. However, its talent was strange, and it wasn't worse than other Black Wind cavalry that had been trained at the same age. You can't be too sure. Gu Jiao glanced at the Horse King that ran off to chase after Butterfly, and her expression was complicated. The Black Wind camp was generally divided into the vanguard, assault, and reserve camps. If one person and one horse were to be counted as a unit, the actual number of units that could participate in the battle was no more than 25,000. In reality, it was even less, because there was still the supply and reserve camps. However, the strength of the steel cavalry was astonishing, and it was the most invincible of all the soldiers. Under Xianyuan Li's leadership, there was once a glorious record of 20,000 Xianyuan steel cavalry trampling over 100,000 Jin soldiers. This was a cavalry that struck fear into the hearts of all countries. Gu Jiao was wearing her own black armor on the first day of her appointment, and she wore a cold and threatening helmet. She carried a red tasseled spear wrapped in cloth, looking valiant and formidable. The generals of the various camps had already gathered at the vanguard camp's training ground, waiting for the new commander of the Black Wind Cavalry. Gu Jiao looked at them from afar and said, Their military posture is not bad." Under the scorching sun, wearing heavy armor, everyone was sweating profusely, but no one moved. These were the soldiers trained by the Xianyuan family. Even after 15 years, They still maintained their excellent and strict traditions and military discipline. The young soldiers were now in their prime. The young soldiers were now middle-aged, and the middle-aged soldiers were now in their twilight years. Their white hair and beards fluttered in the morning breeze, and the wrinkles at the corners of their eyes were old, but their posture was straight and their eyes were firm. In these years there were people who retired and new blood joined, but as long as this army was still there, the soul of Xianyuan would never decay. There was a middle-aged man waiting outside the training ground. He was not wearing armor, and did not seem to know martial arts. When he saw Gu Jiao riding the Black Wind King over, he smiled and went up to greet her. The Black Wind King's aura was too strong, and when it raised its hooves, the middle-aged man was so scared that he took a few steps back. Gu Jiao patted the Black Wind King's neck lightly. "All right, boss, enough is enough." The Black Wind King quieted down. As expected of a horse from the army, it even knew how to show off its strength. The middle-aged man wiped off his cold sweat, and carefully went up again. He cupped his hands and bowed. "This humble one greets Lady Xiao. This humble one's surname is Hu Yang, and I am the advisor of the Black Wind Camp. From today onwards, this humble one will be under your command." "Advisor? Secretary? That's fine too." Gu Jiao looked at the soldiers standing majestically under the morning light and asked, "Among those people, is there anyone who wants to find trouble with me? You'd better think carefully about how to answer." Hu Yang smiled awkwardly and looked back at the crowd. He tried to move closer to Gu Jiao, but the Black Wind King did not flip out. Only then did he move closer and whisper, "General Zhang Hu, he is Han's trusted aide. You should be careful of him." "Understood." Gu Jiao gestured for him to keep up, then urged her horse to move towards the soldiers. She stood in front of the crowd and bluntly said, "Where is Zhang Hu?" Zhang Hu, who was at the head of the first row, held a spear in one hand and a shield in the other. He arrogantly raised his chin and said, "I am Zhang Hu." Gu Jiao made a no sound and rode on the back of the powerful Black Wind King. She calmly said, "I heard that you want to find trouble with this marshal." Hu Yang, who was at the side, trembled. "Why are you so direct? You should at least say a few words." Zhang Hu did not expect the other party to be so direct, and could not help but be stunned. But in the end, he did not put this brat from the Zhao country in his eyes. If he was exposed, then so be it. He was not afraid of him. He coldly snorted and said, "So what if I am?" Gu Jiao calmly said, "Your courage is commendable." Zhang Hu ridiculed, "You're just a brat. Do you know how to train soldiers?" Gu Jiao faintly smiled. "Isn't it enough that you know? Otherwise, why would I keep you? Are you keeping it for fun?" "You." Zhang Hu choked. He had never seen such a brazen and shameless person. This brat was openly admitting that he did not know how to train soldiers? But what he said at the end made so much sense. The marshal did not need to personally train soldiers. It was the duty of the generals. Damn it. Zhang Hu raised the spear in his hand and pointed it at Gu Jiao. He coldly said, "If you have the ability, then don't use the Black Wind King. Fight with me." Gu Jiao found it funny and said, "I can control the Black Wind King. Can you?" Damn it. Zhang Hu choked on his own saliva again. He almost couldn't breathe properly. This brat did not play by the rules. Provocation was useless. Zhang Hu clenched his teeth and said, "I heard that you relied on sucking up to the House of Duke and the other aristocratic families. In the last round of selection, Mu Qingchen helped you. Taoist Qingfeng also helped you. That was why you had the chance to be the first to arrive at the Fire Beacon camp. So sucking up to others is also your ability?" Gu Jiao did not defend himself. Instead, he asked, "Do you think you can suck up to others for free?" Zhang Hu scoffed, "I don't care." Gu Jiao calmly said, "On the battlefield, this move of mine is called subduing the enemy without fighting. It is the best strategy. You played tricks on 5th Master Han. That is called all is fair in war. You went around stealing bamboo tubes to collect information. That is called looking at the big picture. KO. Zhang Hu failed to smear Ling Yun's name. Instead, he became Ling Yun's stepping stone. He was in a bad mood. However, there was still more to come. Gu Jiao sat on the horse and took out the Black Wind Camp badge from his waist. My name is Xiao Lulang. I am the new marshal of the Black Wind Cavalry. Now, I will announce a new transfer. Zhang, who has committed a crime. According to the military regulations, he will be removed from the position of the Left General of the Vanguard Camp and will be replaced by Li Shen. Right Deputy General of the Reserve Camp, Tong Zhong, will be transferred to the Assault Camp. Zhao Dingfeng will be the Left Commander of the Vanguard Camp. Wen Renchong will be the Right Commander of the Vanguard Camp. A series of transfer orders were issued. Anyone with a discerning eye could see that the Han clan's power had been uprooted. There was no hesitation or apprehension. This new marshal was very arrogant. Sir. Hu Yang stood beside Gu Jiao's horse and gave her a meaningful glance. Gu Jiao looked at him and asked, "What's wrong?" Hu Yang whispered, "Li Shen and Zhao Dingfeng have both left the camp. Wen Renchong, he went to forge iron." Forging iron was a more common way of saying it. In truth, Wen Renchong had been transferred to the reserve camp to repair weapons and armor. All day long he was either tinkling or mending. His status was as low as it could get. The last time Hu Yang saw him was a year ago. He felt that he was no longer the Wenren general who made people tremble in fear. He was a blacksmith who had experienced the vicissitudes of life. Everyone could spit at him and look down on him. These three generals were once the trusted aides of the Xianyuan clan. When Renchong had one of his fingers cut off by the enemy in order to protect Xianyuan Zi, Gu Jiao thought for a moment and said to Hu Yang, "Go and call him over." Hu Yang opened his mouth and said, "Ah yes." Hu Yang quickly went to the blacksmith shop in the camp. There were armors and weapons waiting to be repaired everywhere. The fire in the boiler was burning fiercely. The room was so hot that it was difficult to breathe. A bearded man was waiting for the iron to be heated. He sat on a stool and picked up a needle and thread. He lowered his head and repaired the armor on his legs. He wore a leather glove on his right hand. One of the finger sheaths was empty. Hu Yang excitedly entered the room. He almost fell to the ground from heatstroke because of the hot air in the boiler. He took a few steps back and stood outside the door. He shouted at the sweaty man inside, "Wen Renchong, your good luck has come. The new commander of the Black Wind Cavalry has taken office and issued a transfer order. You can return to the Vanguard camp. Or do you want to be the right commander?" "I'm not going," Wen Renchong said without raising his head. Digression. Today is another day of super hard work. The latest chapter of this book is not finished yet. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. Novels are updated even faster. Millions of novels are free to read. Novels that can't be found on the internet are all here. https://www.zhhbqg.com/89642_8964226/10625762. HTML Genius remembers this website's address in 1 second. www.zhhbqg.com Bikugo mobile reading website. zhhbqg.com. Chapter 796. The latest chapter of the book is not finished yet. For more interesting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. Novels are updated faster. Millions of novels are free to read. Novels with inner content that can't be found online are available here. Hu Yang was puzzled. "No, you don't understand, do you? Erhan is gone. The Black Wind Camp is Master Zhao's territory now. Master Zhao appreciates you, so he promoted you on the first day he took office. Don't be so ungrateful. I'm telling you." Wen Renchong said, "I said I won't go, so I won't go." "Hey, you." Hu Yang put his hands on his hips and was about to point at him when a soldier walked over boldly from behind. "Old Chong, is my armor fixed yet?" Wen Renchong didn't even lift his eyelids. He just pointed at the wall on the back left. "It's done. It's on the third shelf over there. Go get it yourself." The soldier pushed Hu Yang aside. Hu Yang was an advisor in name, but he didn't have much status in the camp. The generals of the Han family didn't need an advisor. They had their own aides. To put it bluntly, he was just a decoration, a soldier's salary. Hu Hu Yang staggered and steadied himself by holding onto the wall. He glared at the soldier and gritted his teeth. You little brat, don't you look where you're going? The soldier took his armor and swaggered away without looking at Advisor Hu or Wenren Chong. Advisor Hu only stood in front of the iron shop for a little while, but he felt like he was about to be roasted by the high temperature. He looked at Wenren Chong, who was sitting next to the furnace. He couldn't understand how this guy could withstand the heat. Advisor Hu wiped his sweat with his sleeve and said earnestly, Wenren Chong, you were a confidant of the Xianyuan family. You should know that even if it wasn't the Han family, you wouldn't have a chance to be put in an important position in any other aristocratic family. You're just lucky to have met our Lord Xiao. Lord Xiao dared to risk offending all the aristocratic families, and even His Majesty to promote an old subordinate of the Xianyuan family. Don't tell me you're not moved at all? Wenren Chong continued to repair the armor on his leg. No. Advisor Hu, Mr. Hu was rejected by Wenren Chong. He turned around and complained about Wenren Chong in front of Gu Jiao. That guy doesn't know how to appreciate favors. I'll go take a look, Gu Jiao said. As the commander-in-chief, she had her own tent. Inside the tent were the commander-in-chief's guards, similar to the orderlies in his previous life. Gu Jiao asked him to bring the Black Wind King and the Horse King to the training ground. Then, she went to the blacksmith shop in the camp with Advisor Hu. Advisor Hu had intended to lead the way, but he was not as fast as Gu Jiao. My lord, ma. Teacher Hu watched as Gu Jiao made a right turn and walked towards the smithy. He scratched his head and said, Sir, you know the way. Have you been here before? Ah, right, sir, came to the military camp for the selection. No, the selection was in the front. This is the reserve camp. Forget it, I don't care. When Gu Jiao saw Wenren Chong was no longer repairing his armor. Instead, he was forging with a hammer. Gu Jiao's gaze fell on him. Due to the hot weather, his upper body was bare. His bronze skin was sweating profusely. Although he had not participated in the training of soldiers for many years, forging was still a physical activity. His muscles were very strong. Gu Jiao noticed that he was wearing a leather glove on his right hand. It was probably to cover his broken finger. Advisor Hu chased after them, sweating profusely. He bent over and supported himself with his hands on his thighs. He gasped for breath and said, Wenren Chong, Lord Xiao has come to see you in person. Hurry and greet Lord Xiao. Wenren Chong was not interested in the new commander-in-chief. He still did not look or hear. He waved the hammer in his hand and said, Repair the weapons on the left. Repair the armor on the right. Gu Jiao looked at the piles of damaged armor on both sides of the courtyard and asked, Do we need to register? No. Wenren Chong smashed the hammer again. A series of sparks appeared on the red-hot weapons. Gu Jiao asked, Do you remember who these soldiers belong to? Wenren Chong was finally impatient. He frowned and looked at Gu Jiao. Are you going to repair them or not? If not, don't block my light. He did not finish his sentence. His eyes flashed with uncontrollable surprise. He had not expected the new commander-in-chief to be so young. Gu Jiao's official age was 19, but she was actually less than 17. Didn't she look like a young and immature teenager? However, the teenager was full of righteousness. Her temperament was calm and collected. Her eyes were full of killing intent and calmness. Alas! How can you say that? Advisor Hu was not as panting as before. He pointed at Wenren Chong and said, Zhang Hu was punished for offending his superior. Do you want to be like Zhang Hu? Wenren Chong lowered his eyes and continued to forge. Whatever. Advisor Hu was infuriated by him. Gu Jiao's reaction was quite calm. She glanced at Wenren Chong and said, Then I'll ask you again tomorrow. Then, she put her hands behind her back and turned to leave. Wenren Chong looked at her straightened back and said lightly, Don't waste your energy. It's the same no matter how many times you ask. I'm just a blacksmith. Gu Jiao did not reply, nor did she stop walking. She took Advisor Hu and left the place. Advisor Hu sighed. Master, don't be angry. Wenren Chong has a bad temper. The Han family tried to rope him in, but he didn't know how to appreciate their kindness. Otherwise, How could he have been transferred to the reserve camp to be a blacksmith? Gu Jiao nodded as if she had taken his advice. She asked again, "You said that Li Shun and Zhao Dingfeng were not in the camp. When did they leave? Where are they now?" Advisor Hu thought for a while, and chose his words carefully. "They have been gone for 3 or 4 years. Li Shun left first, and Zhao Dingfeng left less than 2 months later. They used to be at odds with each other. As for where they are now, you go to the tent and rest for a while. I'll go to the training ground and ask around." Okay. Gu Jiao went back to her tent. The tent was quite big. It was divided into 2 rooms by a screen. The outside was the meeting hall, and the inside was her bedroom. The luxurious furnishings in the tent had been moved away, but she could still see how luxurious the Han family was in the camp from the roof and the walls. The Xianyuan family had always been frugal. Although there were many fields and shops under their name, the money they earned was basically used to supplement the military camp. Sitting in the spacious tent, Gu Jiao felt an inexplicable sense of a familiar mission in her heart. Did I get used to Jing Yinin's identity so quickly? Master, I've got it. Advisor Hu panted as he walked into the tent. He bowed respectfully and said, Li Shun and Zhao Dingfeng are in a town outside the city of Sheng. Gu Jiao asked, "How far?" Advisor Hu wiped the sweat from his forehead and answered, "It's not too far. If we take the shortcut, we can get there in about 2 hours." It was her first day on the job. She was not familiar with the work, so it was not a big deal. Gu Jiao said, "Come with me." Were they really so swift and decisive? Advisor Hu was stunned for a while before he reacted. "Yes, I'll go prepare the carriage." Gu Jiao stood up, grabbed the red-tasseled spear on the shelf, and carried it on her back. "No need. Ride the horse." But she did not know how to ride a horse. The Horse King continued to stay in the camp for training. Gu Jiao rode on the Black Wind King while Advisor Hu rode on a Black Wind horse. Together with Gu Jiao, they went to Mount Qiushan where they were. Mount Qiushan was in a completely different direction from Tianxiong Academy. Gu Jiao had never been to the north of the city. She felt that it was not as lively as the south, but it was not desolate either. There was a cargo port in Mount Qiushan. Li Shun worked there as a coolie. There were people coming and going at the port. There were customers rushing to get on and off the ship, as well as able-bodied men working hard to move goods. Li Shun was very strong. He grabbed 3 sacks and carried them on his shoulders, while the others only carried 1. Blue veins bulged on his forehead. Large beads of sweat dripped down like a waterfall onto the bluestone floor that was distorted by the scorching sun. They disappeared with a sizzling sound. Many able-bodied men were suffering from heat stroke. They sat weakly under the shadow of the cargo shed and panted. Gu Jiao could see that Li Shun was also suffering from heat stroke. However, he gritted his teeth and moved the 3 sacks into the warehouse before he could rest. He did not rest for long. Before he fully recovered, he walked toward the cargo ship again. "Li Shun." Advisor Hu called out from his horse. Li Shun turned to look at Advisor Hu and said coldly, "You've got the wrong person." Advisor Hu said seriously, "I'm not mistaken. You're Li Shun. Wang Dezhu, come and move the goods." A boatman on the cargo ship shouted at him. "I'm coming." He jogged over, sweating profusely. Li Shun." Advisor Hu yelled dryly. In the end, he could not stop him. Gu Jiao sat on her horse and looked in Li Shun's direction quietly. What was his situation back then? Advisor Hu said, "Sir, are you asking why he left the army? I heard that something happened to his family. His younger brother is gone, and his sister-in-law remarried with their child. He only has an old mother. He left the army to take care of his mother. But I don't understand why he even changed his name." "Where's Zhao Dingfeng?" Gu Jiao asked. Advisor Hu hurriedly said, "He's in a restaurant 3 miles away. His situation is better. He opened his own restaurant, and I heard that business is good." As he spoke, he looked around and carefully said to Gu Jiao. At that time, there were rumors that Zhao Dingfeng had already joined the Han family and had been secretly selling information to the Han family. He also had a hand in the Xianyuan family's defeat. Everyone did not believe it before. After all, He was Xian Yuancheng's most valued lieutenant. But you see, Sir, Zhao Dingfeng and Li Shun both left the army around the same time. Li Shun became a coolie at the docks, while Zhao Dingfeng got a windfall and opened a restaurant. Sir, please take a good look at it. Gu Jiao said. So it was the Han family who gave him the money? Advisor Hu said in admiration. Sir, you're wise. Let's go take a look. Gu Jiao said. The latest chapter of the book is not finished yet. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. Novels are updated at a faster rate. Millions of novels are free to read. Novels with content that can't be found online are all available here. https://www.zhbqg.com/89642_896428226/1062402330. HTML Genius memorized this website's address in 1 second. www.zhbqg.com Bikugo mobile reading website. zhbqg.com. Chapter 797. The latest chapter of the book is not finished yet. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. Novels are updated at a faster rate. Millions of novels are free to read. Novels with a deeper meaning that could not be found online are available here. Zhao Dingfeng's restaurant was called the Crane Restaurant. It was quite famous in Mount Hill Town, so it was easy to find the way. Gu Jiao was wearing armor and riding the majestic Black Wind King. She looked like a general, but the birthmark on the left side of her face was a bit of an eyesore. When the waiter saw that the guests had arrived, he enthusiastically went out to greet them. Dear guests, this way please. Advisor Hu asked, Is Zhao Dingfeng here? My master is looking for him. The waiter did not dare to offend them as they were dressed like officials. He smiled awkwardly and said, My boss is not available for guests at the moment. Boss Xiao, please have another drink with me. Don't drink from her. If you want to drink, drink from me. A woman's pretentious voice came from one of the rooms on the second floor. It sounded like there was more than one person. The waiter smiled awkwardly. Advisor Hu's face flushed red. He said angrily, How dare you do such a despicable thing in broad daylight? You're too ridiculous. Whoosh. The window lattice was lifted. A half-undressed beauty slammed half of her body out of the window. She slammed so hard that people thought she was going to fall. Her shoulders were half exposed. Her cheeks were red, and her eyes were misty. Which stinky man said that? Was it you or? Her pale finger pointed from Advisor Hu to Gu Jiao. Then she smiled drunkenly. Oh, it's a handsome little general. Come on, general. I'll have a drink with you. Advisor Hu could not bear to look. He dared to look if he was alone, but it was very awkward when he was with his superior. He quickly covered his eyes and turned his face away. Gu Jiao calmly looked up at the second floor, but she was not looking at the woman. The woman huffed. Am I not beautiful? Who are you looking at? Who said my Sanyang is not beautiful? Accompanied by a teasing and drunken voice, a drunken burly man arrived behind the beauty. One of his arms was propped up on the windowsill, while the other was placed on the beauty's soft and slender waist. His eyes blurred as he looked at the youth downstairs. Naturally, he also saw the Black Wind King beneath the young man. His eyes narrowed slightly as he smiled faintly and said, Oh, which young master of the Han family is this? I have never seen him before. Advisor Hu raised his eyes and shouted, How dare you? This was the new Commander Xiao of the Black Wind Battalion, the adopted son of Dukan. Oh, he seemed a little surprised. The Black Wind Cavalry has changed hands again. The Han family is really useless. Zhao Dingfeng. Gu Jiao looked at him calmly. Are you willing to return to the Black Wind camp? Zhao Dingfeng chuckled and said, I'm eating and drinking here, living a carefree and happy life. Why would I go back to the Black Wind camp? It's hard and tiring, and we might have to go to war at any time. It's like playing with your life. Gu Jiao was not angry, nor was she disappointed. She just stared at him without blinking. Her eyes were pure and clear, and they were filled with unyielding determination. Zhao Dingfeng's eyes stung. He stopped smiling and said coldly, If you are here to eat, this meal is on me. If you have other ideas, I advise you to leave. I, Zhao Dingfeng, do not want to have anything to do with the Black Wind camp in this lifetime. With that, he closed the window with a bang. Aya, you almost clipped me. A beauty complained from the second floor. Many commoners had gathered to watch. Even the guests upstairs and downstairs looked at Gu Jiao strangely. Advisor who coughed lightly and said, "Milord, let's go back first." Gu Jiao nodded. "Boss, let's go." The Black Wind King turned around and galloped towards the north gate. Advisor who urged his horse to catch up. "Milord, you had a bad start today. Being rejected 3 times in one day was too miserable." "It's fine," said Gu Jiao. Advisor who was stunned. The youth's expression was calm. There was no frustration, no disappointment, nor was he trying to be brave. Advisor who suddenly realized that the youth beside him was as calm as still water. He was so young, but his heart was so strong. Advisor who had seen countless people, but there were only a few who could reach the youth's level, let alone one who was so young. Advisor who asked, "Milord, did you expect the 3 of them to reject you?" "No," said Gu Jiao. "That means you're not an ordinary person who can endure silently." Advisor who wanted to say something, but Gu Jiao suddenly pulled on the reins and stopped the horse. Advisor who had no choice but to stop as well. He asked in confusion, "Milord, what happened?" Gu Jiao turned to look at the black figure in the tea shed behind her. "You go back first. I won't be returning to the camp today." Yes. Although Advisor who was puzzled, this was his first day in contact with the new Commander-in-Chief. He didn't dare to disobey the new Commander-in-Chief's orders. Advisor who urged his horse back to the inner city. Gu Jiao rode the Black Wind King to the tea shed. She asked the Black Wind King to stay outside the tea shed. She found a table and sat down. "A bowl of herbal tea and 2 steamed buns," she said to the owner. "Yes, sir." The owner of the tea shed filled a large bowl with 2 steamed buns, and a bowl of herbal tea for Gu Jiao. This place was close to the relay station and the yamen, so officers often came and went. The owner of the tea shed had never been to the inner city, so he did not recognize the Black Wind Cavalry. He only thought that Gu Jiao was an officer from the yamen. Gu Jiao picked up the teacup and took a sip in silence. She looked like she was drinking tea, but she was actually observing a man wearing a cloak and a hood. From her angle, she could only see the man's cloak and hood, but when she entered the tea shed, she saw the man's face under the hood. He was wearing a golden half-face mask, revealing a white chin. The man had an unusual aura. Gu Jiao almost immediately concluded that he was a man of sacrifice. Gu Jiao also noticed that the man wore a black jade ring on his left thumb. The man drank a bowl of tea, left 5 knife coins, grabbed the long sword on the table, and left the tea shed. Not long after he left, Gu Jiao also paid for the tea and steamed buns. Then she rode the Black Wind King and left. The Black Wind King had a keen sense of smell, and had been specially trained. It was as good as a horse when it came to tracking people. However, the man was a master. Gu Jiao did not follow him too closely to avoid being discovered. But not long after entering the northern inner city gate, the man's aura suddenly disappeared. The Black Wind King sniffed hard, but could not find which way the man went. What's going on? Did he disappear into thin air? Or? Gu Jiao muttered. Suddenly, she realized something and pulled out the red tasseled spear on her back. A tall figure descended from the sky and kicked her red tasseled spear. She flipped down from the horse with her spear. The tip of the spear touched the ground. She used the momentum to flip and stabilize herself. Only then did she not fall to the ground in a sorry state. She held the red tasseled spear, and looked coldly at the man in the black robe, who landed on the opposite side of the street. This fork in the road was very remote. Other than 2 people and a horse, there was no one else. The man's robe fluttered. The hot summer wind suddenly had a hair-raising chill. Black Wind King? The man in the black robe looked at the horse beside Gu Jiao. His thin lips under the mask opened slightly. "You are that Xiao Lulang." "I am." Gu Jiao looked at him fearlessly. "If I knew that you would recognize me, I would have greeted you at the tea shed, Lord and Hun." That's right. This man was the #1 master under Imperial concubine Han. And Hun. "You actually know me." It seems that the guy from the State Preceptor Hall has revealed a lot of information about me to you. The man in the black robe slowly walked towards Gu Jiao. His steps were very slow, but each step carried a terrifying murderous aura. I didn't come out of the city today for you. But since you sent yourself to me, I have no choice but to take your life. Gu Jiao said. That's not up to you. The man in the black robe smiled faintly. You're young but you talk big. Gu Jiao said indifferently. Aren't you also ugly? Dream on. You have a sharp tongue. The man in the black robe smiled and suddenly attacked Gu Jiao. Gu Jiao felt a huge amount of internal energy pressing down on her body. Before she could break free from this internal energy, the other party's figure flashed in front of her in the blink of an eye and struck her chest with a palm. Gu Jiao blocked it with her red tasseled spear, but she was still sent flying by the man's palm. The Black Wind King rushed to catch her, but the man in the black robe didn't give Gu Jiao a chance to land safely. He flew over and slapped Gu Jiao into the air. Then he jumped up again and stomped on Gu Jiao's abdomen. If this stomp landed, Gu Jiao's organs would rupture, and she would die on the spot. In the nick of time, a gray figure appeared in the air and flashed under his feet. He carried Gu Jiao and knelt on one knee on the side of the street. He didn't continue fighting. He carried Gu Jiao onto the back of the Black Wind King's horse, and rode the Black Wind King through the alley towards a crowded area. Gu Jiao spat out blood and spat out half of Liao Chen's sleeve. Liao Chen held her with one hand and held the reins tightly with the other. They ran for 3 whole streets before the Black Wind King stopped. The latest chapter of this book is not finished yet. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. Novels are updated faster and more complete. Millions of novels are free to read. Novels with content that can't be found online are all available here. https://www.zhbqg.com/89642_896422826/10623992. HTML Genius memorized this site's address in 1 second. www.zhbqg.com Bikugo mobile reading website. zhbqg.com. Chapter 798. The latest chapter of this book is not finished yet. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. Novels are updated even faster. Millions of novels are free to read. Novels that can't be found online are all available here. There was no one around, so Liao Chen jumped off the horse. Without Liao Chen's support, Gu Jiao lay weakly on the horse's back. She had vomited all the blood she should have vomited. She was just exhausted. Liao Chen took her pulse. Although he wasn't a doctor, he was very sensitive to the flow of energy as a martial artist. You're fine. Liao Chen was surprised. This wasn't very accurate. Liao Chen's definition of fine was that there was no need to prepare for a funeral. But Liao Chen was still very surprised. Was this girl so resilient? After taking 2 hits from An Hun, she only spat out some blood. I'm that strong, humph. Gu Jiao lay on Black Wind King's back and said weakly. Yes, she was strong enough to survive 2 hits from An Hun, but it was hard to believe that this girl would say it. Liao Chen's gaze landed on her armor and battlesuit. The fiery red battlesuit looked like a cloak he had seen before, but he couldn't remember what the cloak was for. But the texture of the armor. He raised his hand to touch the armor on Gu Jiao's back. This is, Gu Jiao said. Hey, didn't anyone tell you not to touch girls? The king of atmosphere. The emotions that were surging in Liao Chen's eyes stopped abruptly. He looked at Gu Jiao speechlessly. Oh, you still remember that you're a girl, but you still dare to go against An Hun. Are you crazy? He wanted to go against me. I was just following him. Gu Jiao stated the truth. Although she wanted to kill An Hun, she didn't want to be unprepared. Actually, she and Black Wind King were already very cautious, but An Hun's vigilance was clearly higher than expected. Speaking of which, she was lucky to have this armor. If not for it, she might have died at An Hun's hands. This armor didn't seem to be made of ordinary dark steel. There should be some other material added to it. Not only was it incomparably tough, it could even withstand the attacks of an expert like An Hun. I'm already vomiting blood. but it's not damaged at all, Gu Jiao said as he touched his armor. Liao Chen glanced at her speechlessly. This girl looked very proud. Did she know that she had crawled back from the palace of the King of Hell? Forget it. If she didn't have this drive, she wouldn't have been able to do so many things. Liao Chen said. He underestimated you this time. He didn't use his full strength to kill you. So she wasn't the only one who misjudged. To An Hun, not being able to kill her with 2 consecutive moves was already considered a failure. Gu Jiao lay flat on the Black Wind King's back like a little frog. You can't beat him either, right? Liao Chen said seriously. Of course not. This monk's power is boundless. It's more than enough to deal with a death warrior. I saw that you were injured and worried that you would die after the fight, so I hurried to take you away to find a doctor. But it looks like there's no need to find one. Gu Jiao said. Oh. Liao Chen thought, what's with that tone? Gu Jiao said again. What if you and Taoist Qing Feng work together? Liao Chen said. He won't be willing to work with me. He'll only work with An Hun to kill me first. Gu Jiao pondered for a moment. I've been curious about something for a long time. What did you do to Taoist Qing Feng? Did you steal his wife or dig up his ancestral grave? Why does he want to kill you so badly? Liao Chen took off his wineskin, pulled out the cork and took a sip. Children shouldn't ask about adults' business. Oh, adults' business. Gu Jiao lay on her stomach. Her cheeks were pressed into a lump of meat, but she still pretended to raise her eyebrows. It was hard to look at her. Liao Chen took another sip. After a long silence, he looked at the moon and said, It's not that I can't beat An Hun, I just can't kill him. There was only one person in the world who could kill An Hun. That person was Shi Tian. Unfortunately, Shi Tian went missing during a mission. There was no news of him after that. Most likely, he was already dead. Gu Jiao said. Speaking of which, why did you suddenly appear? You're not just passing by this time, are you? Monk, are you following me? Let me tell you, it's not right to follow a girl. Stalkers like you will be beaten up very badly in our country. Her voice became softer and softer, more and more confused. Liao Chen turned his head and saw that Gu Jiao had fallen asleep from exhaustion. Her vitality was strong and her will was tenacious. But she was not made of iron. She could get hurt and tired. This girl had not had a day of peace since she came to the Yin Kingdom. The alley fell into silence. Liao Chen looked at the armor on her body and murmured, Why is this armor on you? Did Dukin give it to you? How did you become his adopted son? Why would he give such an important thing to you? His gaze fell on her squishy little face. Looking at her drooling appearance, he could not help but ask, Who are you? The sky was already dark. The Black Wind King silently found a place to let Gu Jiao sleep in the cool night wind. Liao Chen walked over and touched the Black Wind King's head. He asked, You don't remember me? The Black Wind King looked at him with a confused expression. Liao Chen stroked its head and said, You're right. You haven't seen me. I've seen you. I was there when you were born. The Black Wind King began to smell the scent on Liao Chen. It was not a familiar scent, but it was not unfamiliar either. It did not make it feel disgusted. Liao Chen did not move. He allowed the Black Wind King to search for the scent of the Xianyuan family on him. But it probably would not be found. The Black Wind King smelled for a long time. Its emotions were not as rich as a human's, but after smelling Liao Chen's scent, it felt an inexplicable sense of melancholy and depression. Liao Chen reached out his hand with the string of Buddhist prayer beads, and gently placed it on the Black Wind King's forehead. He whispered, It's okay, it's okay. The Princess Mansion. It had rained the night before. Today it was sunny after the rain. The air was clear with the smell of earth and grass. Princess Xinyang and Yujin sat in the room and tidied up old clothes. They were all Xiaoheng's childhood. The soft bed was covered with children's clothes. Yujin and Princess Xinyang sat on the edge of the bed at each end. Yujin picked up an old cotton cloth that had been washed clean and said in amusement, This is the young duke's diaper when he was young. You really know how to collect it. You didn't throw away a single one. Princess Xinyang also could not help but laugh. Why would I throw it away? The princess mansion is so big. There's no lack of places to put things. Yujin smiled. You just don't want to. Princess Xinyang picked up a red dudu and said, "This was from when he was 3 months old. He grows quickly. After half a month, he won't be able to wear it anymore." Yujin recalled. At that time, the weather was still cold. I remember that he only wore this dudu twice. Princess Xinyang said, "It's just beautiful. After bathing, let him wear it to satisfy his mother's desire to see. The young duke is pitiful." Yujin folded the dudu and placed it in a box to the side. She then picked up a set of pink underwear. "The young duke probably doesn't know, but when he was 1 year old, you dressed him up as a young girl, right?" Princess Xinyang gently coughed. "It was just for the eyes." Yujin put away the cute underwear and picked up a pair of tiger-headed shoes. Smiling, she said, "This pair of shoes was personally made by this servant." Princess Xinyang pointed at the hat and blanket on the bed. "There's also this tiger-headed hat and tiger-headed blanket. They were both made by you. They are Ahing's first birthday gifts." Yujin smiled. "Princess even remembers." Princess Xinyang's gaze was gentle. Looking at the small shoes and clothes, her entire being emitted a motherly gentleness. "I remember all of Ahing's matters very clearly," she said. Yujin said, "Speaking of the young duke's first birthday, this servant remembers that at that time, you wanted the young duke to grab a book. The young duke wanted the young duke to grab a sword. As a result, the young duke did not grab a single one." Mentioning this, Princess Xinyang did not know whether to laugh or cry. "That's right, he grabbed Long Yi." Princess Xinyang's concept of raising children was completely different from Shangguan Yan's. Shangguan Yan had inherited the Xianyuan family's tradition of raising children. She allowed children to be raised freely, hating that she could not allow Shangguan Qing to grow up wild. As for Princess Xinyang, because of her terrible childhood experience, she was especially careful after having Xiaoheng. She did not leave Xiaoheng's side for even a moment. She did not allow him to leave her sight for even a moment. The only thing missing was tying Xiaoheng to her belt. Before he was 1 year old, Xiaoheng had never seen such a large scene. Suddenly being surrounded by a group of people, with his parents also being accomplices, he was frightened. Feeling wronged, he called out to Long Yi. Long Yi appeared. His little hand tightly grasped Long Yi's finger. Princess Xinyang suddenly sighed. "Is Long Yi still like that?" Yujin nodded her head with a dignified expression. Since Princess gave that thing to him, he just sat in the corridor in a daze every day." The story began when Princess Xinyang suddenly had the idea to organize her old belongings. When she was organizing her old dowry box, she accidentally found a jade thumb ring that had been sealed for many years. This was the thing that Long Yi had brought with him when he had just arrived at Princess Xinyang's mansion. He had accidentally left it in the room of Princess Xinyang. Princess Xinyang had intended to let Yujin return it, but she was suddenly interrupted by the people preparing for the wedding. At that time, the late emperor had passed away, and the emperor had decreed that she and Xiao Ji would get married during the mourning period. The entire Princess Xinyang's mansion was so busy that her feet did not touch the ground. In addition, Long Yi had never looked for that thing, so she had forgotten about the matter of the jade thumb ring. 20 years had passed, and if she had not found it while sorting out her old things, she might not have remembered this jade thumb ring for the rest of her life. Princess Xinyang sighed. "How could I have completely forgotten about it at that time?" Yujin comforted her. "Mainly at that time, you were not sure whether it was Long Yi's or not. All 5 dragon shadow guards had come to your room, and after they left, a jade thumb ring appeared on the carpet, so who would know whose it was?" The reason why she was sure now was because Princess Xinyang had called all 5 of them. Other 4 people had no reaction to the jade thumb ring, and only Long Yi had always been staring at it. At this moment, Long Yi was sitting cross-legged in the corridor. The weather was so hot, and seeing that he liked to sit there, Princess Xinyang spread out a mat for him. Long Yi sat there for a whole day. When Long Yi had just arrived at Princess Xinyang's mansion, Princess Xinyang was unable to distinguish between him and dragon shadow guards. But now carefully thinking about it, other than her insufficient understanding of dragon shadow guards, there was another important reason. That was Long Yi was indeed a death soldier. As for why he had randomly entered Princess Xinyang's mansion, It was probably because he didn't remember who he was, so when he saw death soldiers with the same aura as him, he thought that he was also one of them. He saw that their mission was to protect her, so he mistakenly thought that this was also his mission. Perhaps, it was time for Long Yi to find his true identity, as well as to complete his true mission. Gu Jiao directly slept for 2 hours, and when she opened her eyes, Liaochen was already gone. Gu Jiao slowly sat up, then rubbing her sore neck, she said to Black Wind King, "It's already so late, I'm sorry, I made you carry me for so long." She turned over and dismounted, then stretched her muscles and bones. Soon after, she led Black Wind King to the side of a nearby well, then borrowed a wooden bucket from a commoner who was fetching water from the well, and washed the bloodstains on her body. When she returned to Duke's mansion, her wet clothes had already dried. No one could see that she had vomited blood or was injured. She entered the mansion as if nothing had happened. Little Jing Kong had come today, and the small noise of him and Gu Yen could be heard in Feng Courtyard. In the corridor, Dukin sat in a wheelchair and played chess with Old Chancellor. On the rattan chair beside him, Great Aunt was holding a small jar and eating candied fruit. And in the courtyard, Gu Xiaoshan was learning a new mechanism technique from Master Lu. Master Nan was still obsessed with making poisons, and Gu Chengfeng was dragged to be the referee for Little Jing Kong and Gu Yen, making the two loudspeakers quarrel with each other. Gu Jiao stood at the entrance of Feng Courtyard, and what she saw was such a scene. Everyone seemed to be doing their own thing, but in fact, they were all waiting for her. Everyone just didn't say anything. Each of them was protecting her in their own way. Gu Jiao's pain and tiredness seemed to disappear in an instant. She held Black Wind King's hand and walked into the courtyard as usual. Han family. Mu Ruxin determined the treatment plan for Heir Han. Old Master Han, Han Lei, and Third Master Han were all in Heir Han's room, waiting for Mu Ruxin's diagnosis. Mu Ruxin said, "Heir Han's hamstring has been cut. If he wants to recover, he must be reconnected, but he has missed the best opportunity for surgery. The wound seems to have healed, but the part that should be reconnected is not reconnected. The plan I'm going to use sounds very dangerous, but it's the most practical and effective." "What plan?" Han Lei asked. Mu Ruxin looked at the handsome Heir Han on the bed, then turned to the three of them and said, "Cut his hamstring again. I'll operate on him and reconnect it." Third Master Han said in disbelief, "Are you serious? You want to do it again? Are you sure you want to save him and not kill him? You aren't a spy sent by the Anghua Prefecture to our Han family, are you?" Old Master Han looked at Mu Ruxin with a gloomy gaze. Mu Ruxin hurriedly said, "Third Master, you misunderstood. How could I be Duken's spy? I don't have anything to do with him. I just said that the reason I came to your manor is to seek a bright future for myself. You give me the status of a Shangguan citizen, and I'll cure Heir Han. We don't owe each other anything." Old Master Han said, "This old man has never heard of such a treatment method. Miss Mu, are you sure you can do it?" Mu Ruxin said arrogantly, "This kind of surgery is just a small illness similar to typhoid in the hands of my master, Divine Dr. Luo. I'm not talented, but I've followed my master to perform a few surgeries on hamstrings." Han Lei thought for a while. "Father, I still feel that it's inappropriate." "Grandfather." On the bed, Heir Han, who had been silent for a long time, suddenly said, "Grandson is willing to try." Han Lei frowned. "Ye heir, if you mess it up, there'll be no hope for your leg injury. I've been thinking of a way to beg His Majesty these past few days, asking him to issue a decree for Imperial Preceptor Hall to treat you." Han Yi shook his head. "Father, you should know that Imperial Preceptor Hall won't treat me. Moreover, the Crown Prince and Imperial Concubine have repeatedly angered His Majesty. His Majesty is too lazy to care about the Han family. Let's do as Divine Dr. Mu said." "When can we do the surgery?" Mu Ruxin said. "We can do it now." "Ah, that's right, I suddenly thought of something." Everyone looked at her. She smiled and said, "I was living well in the Dukan residence when Dukan suddenly used my homesickness as an excuse to end my treatment by his side. Coincidentally, on the same day, I saw Xiao Lulang move into the Dukan residence. I don't know if there's any connection between the two." Han Lei said thoughtfully, "Xiao Lulang is his adopted son. It's understandable for him to move into the Dukan residence. Mu Ruxin smiled faintly. But why did he send me away? That's the most suspicious point, isn't it? Han Lei asked. Xiao Lulang moved into the Dukan residence alone. Mu Ruxin sighed. I'm not sure about that. There were 2 carriages behind him. As for what was in the carriages, I didn't see it. Han Lei came over and whispered in old Master Han's ear. Father, could it be that Xiao Liulang's family members have hidden in the Dukan residence? No wonder our people couldn't find them even after searching everywhere. Old Master Han lowered his voice and said faintly, Don't worry about that. We'll send someone to inquire about it later. The most important thing now is Yi Er's injury. As he said that, he crossed his hands and placed them on the handle of his cane as he looked toward Muru Xian. Then I'll ask Miss Mu to operate on this old man's grandson. However, this old man will warn you first. If anything happens to this old man's grandson, Miss Mu will pay with her own life. In the dead of night. After sending off the last trumpet girl, Gu Jiao could finally enjoy her bed. She lay on the soft bed and looked at the pearl-covered canopy. The place where she was injured by an Hun was aching. She massaged her shoulder with one hand and put the other behind her head. You hit me so hard. One day, I'll put you in a sack. In the end, she was too tired. Not long after, she fell into a deep sleep. She hadn't had a foreboding dream for a long time. She used to think wildly that perhaps the things that were foreboding in her dreams had really happened before. After she came to Yan country, everyone's fate had changed. So, she would never have that kind of dream again. But tonight, she dreamed of it again. But it was different from other people's dreams. For the first time, she saw her own ending in her dream. Digression, it's almost the end of the month. If you have a monthly ticket, hurry up and vote. The latest chapter of this book isn't finished yet. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. Novels are updated faster. Millions of novels are free to read. Novels with content that can't be found on the internet are all available here. https://www.zhbqg.com/89642_8964226/1062200014. HTML Genius memorized this website's address in a second. www.zhbqg.com Bikugo mobile reading website. zhbqg.com. Chapter 799. Please scan the QR code below to download the app for more exciting content. The novel will be updated at a faster rate. Millions of novels will be read for free. You can find all the novels that you can't find on the internet. When Gu Jiao woke up, there was still blood in her eyes that had not faded. The bloody mist in the dream seemed to have spread to the room. Even the white pearls on the curtains had turned into blood-red agates. The suffocating and nauseating smell of blood filled her nostrils. Broken corpses were lying on the beams. Drip, drip. Drops of thick blood dripped on her expressionless cheeks. Jiao Jiao. Jiao Jiao. Someone seemed to be calling her. Jiao Jiao. Jiao Jiao. Little Jing Kong climbed onto the bed and shook her shoulders. Jiao Jiao, why are you ignoring me? The blood-dripping corpse was blocked by a tender little face, and everything in the dream came to an abrupt end. Gu Jiao blinked and completely woke up from the nightmare. She looked at little Jing Kong, who was looking at her worriedly with his eyes wide open. She answered calmly with a hoarse voice, Jing Kong. Little Jing Kong took a deep breath. I was just worried about you. Gu Jiao lay flat on the soft bed. She raised her hand and hugged the little guy. I'm fine. Little Jing Kong suddenly got a loving hug and was very shy. Her little hands covered her reddened little face, and her little feet swayed as she had nowhere to put them. Jiao Jiao really likes me the most. Jiao Jiao. Jiao Jiao, you're hugging me a little too tightly. He was almost out of breath. Little fool. Why did you come? Why did you come to collect my corpse even though you knew it was a trap? Jiao Jiao. Let's go home. I'll take you home. The young man's blood-soaked body tightly protected her in his embrace, just like how she had hugged him when he was young. His eyes were red from killing, and his back and legs were filled with arrows that glittered with cold light. His hot blood stained her path to the yellow springs. He put her on the bamboo raft to return home, but he himself fell down by the river that was engulfed in the flames of war. Great Yan's youngest god of war had fallen. After breakfast, Gu Jiao went to the Black Wind camp as usual. She first went to the various training grounds to take a look. All the generals were seriously training their soldiers, and the Black Wind cavalry were also accepting their mission without complaint. Little Shi did not stop messing around even after defeating more than a dozen horse trainers. It was so energetic that even 10,000 horses despised it. Even the explosive training that horses were most afraid of was quickly addicted to it. The well-behaved horses were thrown into chaos by it, and the training ground became a scene of a large-scale car accident. In the end, it was the Black Wind King who suppressed Little Shi with force. Only then did Little Shi obediently go back to training. However, it seemed to be obedient. When it brushed past a Black Wind cavalry, it raised its hooves and kicked the horse's butt. The horse was speechless. How could it be so despicable? The price for its despicable behavior was that Little Shi was taught a lesson by the Black Wind King. In the end, it could only limp to the training ground. It was very miserable. "My lord! My lord!" Teacher Hu ran over energetically. He had learned his lesson today, and he had a feather fan in his hand. He fanned Gu Jiao with a smile and said, "Why are you here so early? The sun just rose not long ago." "I'm here to take a look," Gu Jiao said. Teacher Hu smiled and said, "When you issued the transfer order yesterday, it was like a thunderbolt that corrected the Black Wind camp's bad habits. The generals that you promoted are all in awe of you, so how could they not train their soldiers seriously? You don't have to worry about it." Some of the generals that she promoted were old subordinates of the Xianyuan family, and some were new blood that joined later. They trained their soldiers seriously not because they respected her, but because the Black Wind camp's military discipline and traditions were like that. They were strict with themselves, and they were strict with their subordinates. Now that she had a title, it wasn't that they really respected her, but that it was their duty to obey her orders. Teacher Hu saw that Gu Jiao's expression didn't change at all, so he couldn't help but wonder if he didn't flatter her in the right place. He said with a smile, "It's so hot today. My lord, you should go rest in the tent." Gu Jiao put her hands behind her back and said, "I'm going to find Wenren Chong." After saying that, she turned around and went to the reserve camp. Teacher Hu couldn't stop her even if he wanted to. "Ah, my lord. My lord. Oh, I need you to do something for me," Gu Jiao said before going to Wenren Chong. The weapons and armors that were piled up like a mountain in the courtyard when she left yesterday were nowhere to be seen today. It seemed that Wenren Chong had repaired them overnight. He was a very efficient person. Wenren Chong was sitting in the room, repairing the armors that were delivered that morning. Gu Jiao walked over. Wenren Chong looked up at her. Gu Jiao glanced at the shadow on the ground and said, "I didn't block the light." Wenren Chong continued to repair the armors. "Do you need help?" Gu Jiao asked. "I used to be a doctor, and suturing is my specialty." Wenren Chong frowned. It seemed that he was a little impatient with this young man, but he didn't know how to drive him away. He had no choice but to say indifferently, "No need." Gu Jiao sat down on the threshold, resting her elbows on her knees and supporting her head with one hand. She looked at him and said, "I went to see Li Shun and Zhao Dingfeng yesterday. What do you want to do?" Wenren Chong frowned. "I want to win over the old subordinates of the Xianyuan family," Gu Jiao said without hiding anything. The Black Wind camp that had been ruled by the Han family for more than 10 years was not weak, but the Han family had dismissed too many excellent soldiers. Many of the old subordinates of the Xianyuan family had left one after another. Wenren Chong, Li Shun, Zhao Dingfeng, and Shi Zhongkui, who had died in the battle, were the 4 fierce generals of the Black Wind camp. Some people called them the 4 kings in private. Now only Wenren Chong was left, and he had become a blacksmith. If Gu Jiao wanted to restore the morale of the Black Wind camp, she had to gather the old subordinates of the Xianyuan family. There is no Xianyuan family anymore. Wenren Chong said calmly. Gu Jiao said, "I ask you every day, do you want to go back to the vanguard camp?" If you don't, I will come back tomorrow. Wenrin Chong said indifferently. How many times do I have to tell you before you understand? Even if you ask me for 1 year, 2 years, or 5 years, I won't agree. Gu Jiao raised her eyebrows. You mean you will stay in the Black Wind camp for 1 year, 2 years, 5 years, and never leave? Wenrin Chong stood up and went to boil the boiler. You should go. Gu Jiao stood up and dusted her clothes. See you tomorrow. Wenrin Chong pulled the bellows and did not look back. Gu Jiao went around the camp again before returning to her tent. Teacher Hu also came back. Is it done? Gu Jiao asked. It's done. Teacher Hu had been in the camp for so many years, but this was the first time he was entrusted with an important task. He really showed his sincerity and efficiency. Gu Jiao weighed the money bag that Teacher Hu handed to her. She did not count it and just put it on her waist. Teacher Hu was overjoyed. Darren trusted him. He Hu Yang finally had a chance to stand out. Darren, how was your talk with Wenrin Chong? Did he agree to go back to the Vanguard camp? He asked with concern. Not yet. Gu Jiao said. Teacher Hu's face darkened. Why is he so uncooperative? Gu Jiao stood up and walked out. Teacher Hu was surprised. Darren, you just came back. Where are you going? Gu Jiao said. I'm going to find Li Shen and Zhao Dingfeng. Teacher Hu thought of the experience of almost vomiting yesterday. He swallowed and asked. Then should I go with you? Gu Jiao said lightly. Come if you want. I don't want to come. But if you say so, how can I not come? Today she went to see Zhao Dingfeng first. She had deliberately mentioned the two of them in front of Wenrin Chong to see his reaction. Wenrin Chong's reaction was very calm. Either he had never heard the rumor that Zhao Dingfeng had colluded with the Han family, or he knew that the rumor was false. From Gu Jiao's observation of Wenrin Chong, the former was unlikely. Oh, isn't this the officer from yesterday? Why did you come to my Crane restaurant again? In a room on the second floor, Zhao Dingfeng was holding a beauty in his arms. He leaned against the window and looked at the young man on the horse. Are you here to persuade me to go back to the army? Who wants to go back and live a life of bloodshed? How about this, little general? You come to my Crane restaurant and be the second boss. Teacher Hu was angry. He pointed at him with his feather fan and scolded. Zhao, how can you talk like that? Little general? This is the new commander of the Black Wind Battalion, Darren Shao. I already told you about it yesterday. Gu Jiao said. Boss? That's a good idea. Zhao Dingfeng looked at the young man who was led by the nose. Isn't that right? As long as you have enough money, I can give you half of the Crane restaurant. Gu Jiao looked up at him. I don't need you to give me a share. I'll buy your Crane restaurant. Zhao Dingfeng was stunned. Then he laughed. Do you know what you're saying? My Crane restaurant is the best restaurant in town. Does your family have a mine? Little general. Before he could finish his words, the young man on the horse casually tossed him a token. He caught it with a backhand, and when he took a closer look, he was stunned. Gu Jiao asked seriously, is this enough? If not, I'll send someone to get more. Dukin asked Steward Zheng to give it to her before she left this morning. She had never used it before and did not know how much money it could give. Zhao Dingfeng choked. He asked in disbelief. Mingyi Bank's master token you. Who are you to Mingyi Bank? Gu Jiao thought for a while and said, a young master? My family doesn't have a mine, but my family has a bank. Gu Jiao said to Hu Yang. Teacher Hu, stay here and take care of the paperwork. I'll go find Li Shen. Advisor Hu was still immersed in the huge shock brought about by this wave of operation. Was this the rumored inhumane tycoon? He said. This, Zhao Dingfeng said coldly. I won't sell it. Gu Jiao said. You said yourself that you wanted me to be the owner. You can't go back on your word. Zhao Dingfeng clenched his fists and sneered. So what if I go back on my word? Gu Jiao said seriously. I'll beat you up. Zhao Dingfeng was speechless. Li Shen was not at the docks today. Gu Jiao asked the nearby foreman, and found out that he had probably gone to buy medicine for his mother. Where does he live? Gu Jiao asked. He lives over there. Sir, if you keep walking straight and turn east of the fork, you'll see his house. The people in that alley have all moved away. Only the mother and son still live there. It'll be easy to find. Thank you. Gu Jiao followed the path the foreman pointed out and successfully found a small, shabby courtyard. The courtyard door was ajar. Gu Jiao knocked on the door. Excuse me, is anyone home? No one answered. Gu Jiao thought for a moment, then pushed the door open and walked in. The things in the courtyard were very old, but not messy. Water tanks hosed chicken coop. They were placed neatly. The clothes on the clothesline were also neatly dried. They had been washed until they were yellow. Patches were made one after another, but they were very clean. Nyowazi, you're back? An old voice came from inside the room. Nyowazi, Li Shun's pet name? Gu Jiao walked into the central room and walked to the room on the right. Nyowazi. A blind old woman was sitting on the ground. It looked like she had fallen and could no longer stand up. She tried to use her hands to support herself on a chair, but it was useless. Gu Jiao hurriedly walked forward and helped her sit down on a chair. You're not Nyowazi, the old woman said. Although she couldn't see, she could still smell her son's scent. I'm here to find Li Shun. Gu Jiao saw the old woman's vigilant look and added, I'm his friend. The old woman touched Gu Jiao's armor, and the vigilance in her turbid eyes disappeared. She smiled and said, Nyowazi's friend. He went out to get medicine for me. He'll be back soon. Sit for a while, I'll pour you some tea. Nyowazi was really Li Shun's pet name. Gu Jiao said to Mother Li, You sit, I'll do it myself. Mother Li smiled kindly. Okay, don't be polite. The tea is on the table in the central room. Gu Jiao went to pour the tea. In their house, even the teacups were cracked. There were only 2 stools. Other than that, there was no other furniture in the central room. It wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that this house was bare. Gu Jiao went to the kitchen. The cupboard was empty. There were no leftovers. There were a few dried corn cobs and half a rotten pumpkin on the ground. There was only half a bucket of old rice in the rice jar, and there were worms all over it. Gu Jiao took the water to Mother Li's room. Have some tea. You came to my house, and I even asked you to pour me tea. It's all my fault for being blind and useless. It's nothing. It's just a little money. It's only enough for 3 sets of medicine. At the pharmacy, the shop assistant impatiently said to Li Shun. 3 sets it is. Li Shun emptied his pockets and grabbed 3 sets of medicine to go home. When he entered, he clearly sensed that someone had been in the courtyard. A trace of vigilance flashed through his eagle-like eyes. He flew into the room. Mother! His mother was sleeping peacefully on the bed, but she was startled by his voice. Nyowazi, what's wrong? Mother Li turned her head in the direction of the voice. Seeing that his mother was fine, Li Shun's expression relaxed. He carried the medicine bag to the bedside. Mother, did someone come to our house? Mrs. Li smiled and said, That's right. Your friends from the military camp came by. At first, I thought it was those debt collectors again. In order to cure Mother Li's eyes, Li Shun had borrowed money from loan sharks. From time to time, debt collectors would come knocking. He also left something for you. Mother Li took out a bundle from under the quilt on the inside of the bed and handed it to Li Shun. It's silver, right? She asked in a small voice. Li Shun took it in his hand and felt that it was silver. He opened the bundle. Other than a pile of shining silver ingots, there was also a letter from the Black Wind Battalion. The letter explained the origin of the silver. It was his retirement pay. When the Han family was in power, someone pocketed 90% of his retirement pay. This was the retirement pay he deserved, as well as the interest that should have been paid to him over the years. The latest chapter of this book is not finished yet. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. Novels are updated faster and more complete. Millions of novels are free to read. Novels that can't be found online are all here. https://www.zhpqg.com/89642_8964286/1062007767. HTML Genius memorized this website's address in 1 second. www.zhpqg.com Bikugo mobile reading website. zhpqg.com Chapter 800. The latest chapter of this book is not finished yet. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. The novel was also updated at a faster rate. Millions of novels were read for free. There are all kinds of novels that can't be found online here. Over at the State Preceptor Hall, Shang Guanyin gradually woke up. From waking up once a day for a quarter of an hour, she could now wake up for more than 2 hours a day. The monarch had visited her twice. Wang Xianfei and the others were so scared that they couldn't sleep at night. They were afraid that Shang Guanyin would take things too hard and die together with them. After discussing with her family, Consort Dongchen was the first to think of a solution. And this news was quickly found out by Consort Wang Xian's spies. Wang Xianfei followed suit. Almost at the same time, Yang Defei, who had been watching Wang Xianfei, also knew what she was planning. She also felt that this method was feasible. At first, Chen Shufei and Feng Zhaoyi did not know what the three of them were busy with, but after paying attention to the movements of the three great families, they could more or less guess what was going on. At first, the five of them didn't admit it on the surface, but the more they investigated, the bigger the commotion became. They couldn't hide it any longer, so they might as well confess to each other. Therefore, at the end of July, the 5 imperial concubines once again gathered in the imperial preceptor palace. The eunuchs had been dismissed. Shang Guanyin sat on the chair and resisted the urge to hold half of the watermelon and eat it spoonful by spoonful. She looked at the 5 people sitting opposite her with a cold and world-weary expression. "What are you doing here?" As the most senior imperial concubine, Wang Xian was still the one to speak out. She said, "Shang Guanyin, this queen knows that you don't want to die. What you said last time was just to threaten us." Look at these beautiful words. If Shang Guanyin hadn't been prepared, she would have been deceived by her and exposed her secret. Shang Guanyin slowly said, "Since you think I'm pretending, then why are you still looking for me? You don't have to worry about whether or not I have something on you." Consort Dong snorted and said, "Shang Guanyin, we watched you grow up and sympathized with you, so we are doing you a favor." Shang Guanyin faintly smiled. "Oh, one of you is playing the good cop and the other is playing the bad cop. You're setting up a stage here. Turn right when you get out of the door. Take care." Their faces and necks turned red from choking. Wasn't the previous Shang Guanyin a brute who only knew how to fight? When did she become so eloquent? Wang Xianfei said, "Well, since we are here, we sincerely want you to trade with us." Since their words were useless in front of Shang Guanyin, they might as well speak frankly. Wang Xianfei then said, "Shang Guanyin, you can disregard your own life and death, but can you also disregard the reputation of the Xianyuan family? Let's not beat around the bush about what happened to the Xianyuan family back then. It's true that the crimes of the Xianyuan family were imposed by the other aristocratic families. Do you want the Xianyuan family to be remembered for generations to come? Or do you want the Xianyuan family to go down in history and infamy? Make your choice." Shang Guanyin didn't have the slightest emotional fluctuation because of these words. "Wang Xianfei, now you are the one begging me, not the other way around. You'd better put your attitude right." Wang Xianfei clenched her handkerchief so tightly that she almost poked a few holes in it. She asked faintly, "It seems that you don't want the evidence?" Shang Guanyin casually said, "It's just the evidence of a few aristocratic families. It doesn't mean anything." The 5 people secretly exchanged a look. What's the matter with Shang Guanyin? How can she guess that they only want to hand over the evidence of the other aristocratic families? They just want to protect their own families, and then pray that Shang Guanyin can be deceived and give them the evidence. Shang Guanyin put down the teacup in her hand on the table and said, "Since you want to rehabilitate the Xianyuan family, then take out all the evidence. There are more than 30 crimes of the Xianyuan family, not one less. Don't challenge my patience, and don't think that you can bargain with me. Maybe tomorrow, I will want more than this." "You." Chen Shufei stomped her feet in anger. Such a result was not entirely unexpected. At that time, the worst-case scenario was that Shang Guanyin would ask them to gather all the evidence. Wang Xianfei suppressed her anger and said sternly, "We can give you the evidence of our crimes, but you must also give us the written evidence of our crimes. That kind of thing is useless. I can give it to you at any time. 3 hours later, Xiao Heng and the old chancellor checked all the accounts, letters, and other evidence and determined that it was true. The two sides finished the transaction. Wang Xianfei angrily left. The evidence involved a wide range of people. If Shang Guanyin didn't see it with her own eyes, she would have found it hard to believe. Even General Weiwu is involved. The enemy can never hurt you. The real chilling thing is the betrayal of your friends and family. Shang Guanyin murmured. General Weiwu is uncle's subordinate. He also taught Xianyuan Qing martial arts. Who would have thought that he would burn the Xianyuan family's granary for his own selfishness? Xiao Heng comforted her. It's all in the past. Such a thing will never happen again. Shang Guanyin restrained the melancholy in her heart and said to her son, this evidence should be enough to rehabilitate the Xianyuan family. Xiao Heng paused. Not yet, there is no evidence for the crime of rebellion. Because the crime of rebellion is real. Unless the emperor is willing to admit that he schemed against the Xianyuan family and forced the Xianyuan family to rebel. But that was simply impossible. Xiao Heng said, how about this? Mother will take this evidence as your loyalty and filial piety to the emperor in exchange for the position of the crown princess. The rest is not urgent. When mother becomes the crown princess, we will find a way to take away the emperor's real power. We can still rehabilitate the Xianyuan family. Shang Guanyin nodded in agreement. I think it's good. When dawn comes, I will take this evidence to the emperor. The imperial palace. Just as the monarch was about to rest, Zhang Dequan quickly walked over. He glanced at the young princess who was sleeping soundly on the small bed and reported in a low voice. Your Majesty, Madame Han of the Cold Palace is clamoring to see you. The emperor coldly said, how many times does she want to see me? Zhang Dequan didn't dare to answer and only reported, Han said that she has a secret of the empress. This was the original words of the little palace maid. Zhang Dequan didn't exaggerate a word. When he heard that it was related to the empress, the emperor patiently went to the Cold Palace. Concubine 1 has now been demoted to Wang Guiran and lived on the west side of the Cold Palace, while Han was imprisoned on the east side. The emperor went directly to Han's side. Although she was banished to the Cold Palace, Han still dressed herself up very decently to see the emperor. But so what? The emperor didn't even look at her. She sat on the shabby stone bench and said to the emperor with a smile, Your Majesty, this concubine has brewed tea. I don't know if Your Majesty is used to the Cold Palace's tea? The emperor frowned and said, What do you want? Han gently said, Your Majesty, you came here just for the secret related to the empress? Your Majesty didn't ask how this concubine has been living these days in the Cold Palace? Your Majesty is really cruel. Only when a man loves a woman will he take pity on her weakness. And when a person has no feelings for her, she can only moan without illness. The emperor's eyes became more and more impatient. Han did not seem to notice and said to herself, That's right, Your Majesty only has Xianyuan Hanyan in your heart. When has there been any other sisters in your harem? But even for the person he loved, His Majesty could still be ruthless. Your Majesty's heart only has yourself. The emperor impatiently said, If you have nothing to say, we will leave. Han poured herself a cup of tea. Before the empress died, she did tell this concubine her true feelings. She said that she regretted marrying Your Majesty. If possible, she begged me to think of a way to not bury her in the imperial mausoleum with Your Majesty. She did not want to meet Your Majesty on the road to the Yellow Springs. The emperor's heart fiercely trembled. He knew that Xianyuan Hanyan hated him, but he didn't expect her to hate him to this extent. Han sneered. Does Your Majesty's heart hurt? Or is it that Your Majesty does not want to believe what this concubine said? That's right. When has Your Majesty ever believed this concubine? Even this time, this concubine was clearly framed, but Your Majesty still chose to be blind. Until tonight, this concubine was waiting for Your Majesty to come and see this concubine. This concubine did not want to go to this step. Your Majesty, you forced this concubine. This concubine came to the palace with admiration for Your Majesty. All these years, This concubine hoped day and night to become a real couple with your majesty. What did Xianyuan Hanyan do? Your majesty's harem was all taken care of by this concubine. This concubine thought that she had some weight in your majesty's heart, but in the end, I found out that your majesty was just unwilling to tire Xianyuan Hanyan. But that woman never looked back at your majesty. This concubine hated her. So this concubine had people kidnap Shang Guanyan. She was sold to the slave broker and became a slave. The emperor's heart fiercely trembled. It's you? Han Shi smiled and said, It's this concubine. The monarch was furious. He strode forward and grabbed her neck. I'm going to kill you. Han Shi was choked until she couldn't breathe. Her face turned purple, but she smiled ferociously. It's too late. Your Majesty, it's too late, you can't kill this concubine. As soon as her voice fell, a dark shadow fell from the sky and chopped the back of the emperor's neck with a hand knife. The emperor's body suddenly became numb. He let go of Han Shi's hand and fell to the ground in a daze. He saw the hem of a black cloak and a pair of black shoes inlaid with gold. Then his eyelids drooped and he completely fainted. Digression. The chapter of Yin Country came to an end. The latest chapter of this book is not finished yet. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. Novels are updated faster. Millions of novels are free to read. Novels with connotations that can't be found on the internet are all available here. https://www.zhhbqg.com/89642_896/106199372. HTML Genius remembered this site's address in a second. www.zhhbqg.com Bikago mobile reading website. zhhbqg.com. Chapter 801. The latest chapter of this book is not finished yet. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. Novels are updated faster. Millions of novels are free to read. Novels with content that can't be found online are available here. In the middle of the night, there was a sudden clap of thunder in the capital of Yin Kingdom. The young princess ate too many grapes before going to bed, and woke up in the middle of the night. She opened her eyes and said, "Mama, I want to pee." No one responded to her. She stayed on her bed for a while and couldn't hold it in any longer. She had to get up on her own. The young princess was a very shy little elder. She had stopped wetting her bed since she was 2 years old, so she decided to pee on her own. But with the thunder and lightning outside, she was a little scared. "Uncle, uncle." She sat under the small mosquito net and called out twice, but no one responded to her. She really couldn't hold it in any longer. Her little face scrunched up and she tried hard to hold back her pee. She slipped out of bed and walked barefoot on the floor. Eunuch Zhang. Everyone in the bedchamber seemed to have run out. She was the only one left in the hall that was illuminated by the flickering lightning. Her small body stood on the floor in a daze, like a pitiful little doll. Suddenly, a figure in a dragon robe walked in from the door. He was against the moonlight and was illuminated by the sudden lightning. The young princess was so scared that she shivered in front of her uncle, who was tall and majestic. She peed. There was a thunderstorm at night and the temperature was much cooler in the early morning. Little Jing Kong didn't officially live in the house of High Duke. He only came over occasionally and didn't come last night. As usual, his great-aunt and Gu Yan slept in their rooms. Gu Xiaoshan and Master Lu woke up early to practice carpentry. Gu Xiaoshuan's talent was amazing. Master Lu was no longer satisfied with teaching him simple craftsmanship. He began to slowly teach him various kinds of mechanism techniques. There were trustworthy servants in the courtyard, so Master Nan didn't need to cook. She went out early in the morning to pick herbs. The house of High Duke came over to have breakfast with Gu Jiao, Gu Xiaoshan and Master Lu. Recently, there had been a continuous stream of people asking the servants of the High Duke's estate for information. There were also unknown people secretly loitering around the entrance of the High Duke's estate. It should have been Muru Xian who had leaked the information, causing the Han family to be on high alert. Steward Zheng was already prepared. He had his subordinates collect the Han family's money while informing the Han family that they were on holiday. The High Duke has a few entertainers. They sing all day long in the backyard. In my opinion, I'm afraid that our High Duke's integrity will be compromised in his later years. Dukin knew nothing about this. It was all Steward Jung who acted according to the circumstances. Anyway, Dukin had said that it was fine as long as they could fool the Han family. As for how to fool them, that was up to him. After breakfast, Dukin sent Gu Jiao to the door as usual. Of course, it was still Gu Jiao pushing his wheelchair. After Gu Jiao moved into the public house, he increased the intensity of his rehabilitation. The flexibility of his arms and body had greatly improved. In the past, he could only lift his wrist, but now he could lift his entire arm slightly. His legs also had some strength. Although he couldn't stand, he could sway slightly when he was sitting or lying down. In addition, his vocal cords could finally make a sound. Although it was only one syllable, it was already a huge improvement. The father and daughter came to the door. Gu Jiao grabbed the reins on Black Wind King's back and said to Dukin, "Godfather, I'm going to the military camp." Dukin, "Ah. Okay. Take care on the way." Gu Jiao flipped onto the horse and was about to gallop away when she saw a battered figure stumbling over. The guards of the Duke Dinggua's mansion hurriedly stood in front of Gu Jiao, and Dukin vigilantly. It's me." The man was so tired that he lost his voice. He fell to the ground and gasped for breath. "Eunuch Zhang?" Gu Jiao saw his appearance clearly. She hurriedly flipped off the horse and came to him. She squatted down and asked him, "How did you end up like this?" Zhang Dequan's hair was disheveled and his clothes were messy. He even lost one of his shoes. He didn't have much strength left. He grabbed Gu Jiao's wrist with a strong will. "Lord Xiao, quickly tell the third princess and His Highness Zhangsun, something happened to His Majesty. Last night, the king went to the cold palace to see imperial concubine Han. It was related to Empress Xuanyuan's secret, so Zhang Dequan didn't dare to listen. He tactfully waited outside the courtyard. He didn't know what the two talked about. He just felt that the king had been in there for too long. Based on his understanding of the king didn't have any feelings for imperial concubine Han. He should have come out after asking what was going on. He muttered in his heart and peeked inside weakly. It was this one glance that saved his old life. He saw a black-robed man descend from the sky and knock out the king with one palm. He wasn't the kind of person who would run away when his master died. However, knowing that he wasn't a match for the king and still rushing to die with him, that wasn't loyalty, but illness. He broke into a run. Perhaps the heavens didn't want him to die. There happened to be an imperial expert patrolling nearby. The imperial expert sensed the fluctuation of the expert's inner energy and used his light body technique to go to the cold palace to investigate. The two sides were probably entangled, which gave him the chance to escape. He originally planned to escape to the king's bedchamber to dispatch experts, but he was shocked to find that all the experts in the palace had been killed. He boldly guessed that when the king went to the cold palace to see imperial concubine Han, someone sneaked in and killed them. After killing them, that person went to the cold palace to report to imperial concubine Han and knocked out the king. He had never been lucky in his life, but tonight, he had brushed shoulders with the king of hell twice. He understood that the palace was no longer safe, so he escaped the palace in the middle of the night. He didn't go to the state preceptor hall because he was worried that if imperial concubine Han found out that he wasn't there, she would definitely guess that he went to the state preceptor hall to find the third princess and the imperial grandson. He also remembered that Lord Xiao had moved to the High Duke's public house, so he decided to come over and try his luck. After saying that, he fainted. Steward Zhang was dumbfounded. "Hey, Eunuch Zhang, you should explain clearly what happened to His Majesty." Gu Jiao was silent. It couldn't be what she was thinking, right? Steward Zhang asked Gu Jiao, "Young master, what should we do with him?" Gu Jiao took his pulse and said, "He's fine, he's just tired and fainted. Carry him into the residence first. I'll go to the state preceptor hall." "Ah," Nguogong said. Gu Jiao turned to look at Nguogong. Nguogong wrote on the armrest, "It's better for me to go." You go to the barracks as usual and pretend that you didn't see eunuch Zhang. If there's anything, I'll get someone to contact you. Gu Jiao thought for a moment. All right. Steward Zhang hurriedly asked someone to carry the fainted eunuch Zhang into the residence and repeatedly ordered the guards. No one is allowed to spread what happened today. Yes. The guards responded, and Guogong went to the state preceptor hall and secretly brought Xiao Heng onto his carriage. When Xiao Heng arrived at Feng courtyard of Nguogong's residence, Zhang Dequan had been woken up by Nan Shernyoung's acupuncture. Xiao Heng went to the side room to see him. In Gu Qingfeng's room next door sat his great-aunt, the old chancellor, and Gu Qingfeng and Gu Yan who were eavesdropping. Nan Shernyoung was drying medicine in the courtyard. As she was drying, she approached the window of the side room. Master Lu was making crossbows, and as he did so, he came to the window. The husband and wife looked at each other. Zhang Dequan told them everything that happened last night, and didn't forget to add his own thoughts in the end. I felt that it was inappropriate at the time, but Your Highness Zhang's son must understand His Majesty's temperament. It's about Empress Xianyuan, His Majesty can't not go. This was giving advice after the horse's back. At the time, he didn't expect Han Shernyoung to be so bold as to murder the monarch of a country in the palace. Did you hear what they said? Xiao Heng asked. Your servant didn't dare to eavesdrop, just. Zhang Dequan recalled carefully. There were a few words that they said quite loudly, so your servant heard them. Han Shi said. This concubine also didn't want to go to this step. Your Majesty, you forced this concubine. Xiao Heng paused and asked, Is there anything else? Zhang Dequan scratched his head. And His Majesty said, It's you? I'm going to kill you. That's it. It sounded like the monarch and Han Shernyoung had a dispute. What do you think, great-aunt? Xiao Heng went next door. Empress Dowager Zhuang hugged the candied fruit jar and snorted. Love but can't have it, and hate because of jealousy. It was another concubine Jing, but she was even more ruthless. Concubine Jing also loved the previous emperor, but couldn't have him. Unfortunately, she didn't dare to touch him, and could only make things difficult for his women and children. As the saying goes, pick on a soft persimmon. However, she didn't expect Empress Dowager Zhuang to be a cactus. Empress Dowager Zhuang ate a candied fruit. Oh, this is how you deal with scum. Xiao Heng. Great-aunt, whose side are you on? Gu Qingfeng asked. Since Han Shernyoung has such a powerful expert by her side, why didn't she make a move earlier? Why did she wait until she and her son were both deposed before making a move? As a man of steel, Gu Qingfeng couldn't understand Han Shernyoung's actions. Empress Dowager Zhuang, as a woman who had been in the imperial harem for many years, could more or less understand Han Shernyoung's state of mind. Han Shernyoung already had a weapon to deal with the monarch. The reason she didn't make a move, other than considering the risk of the whole thing, was that she still had some feelings for the monarch. She hated the monarch, but she also hoped that the monarch would make her empress, so that she could be the mother of the country and be a couple with the monarch to grow old together. Unfortunately, the monarch's actions chilled Han Shernyoung's heart. Her original intention of calling the monarch to the cold palace was to give the monarch one last chance. As long as the monarch showed some feelings for her, she could wait. Unfortunately, she was disappointed. She never had a place in the monarch's heart. A woman who was serious about her career was the scariest. The Yan monarch was in for a hard time. On the other side, Steward Zhang, who went to the palace to inquire about the news, also returned. He reported the news to Dukin and the others. His Majesty went to the court. I didn't hear anything happened. However, eunuch Zhang, it was said that he was having an affair with a palace maid called you. He was worried that he would be punished, so he fled the palace in the middle of the night. Zhang Dequan, who had just walked to the door and heard this sentence. Zhang Dequan. His Majesty already knew about me and Qiu having an affair. I went to the open road. His Majesty can't punish me. I can't run away because of this. Everyone's mouth twitched. You really did have an affair with someone. This matter was very secretive. Other than the monarch, Zhang Dequan didn't let a second outsider know. Zhang Dequan was so shocked that he forgot to be surprised when he saw so many people in the room, including 2 patients he had seen in the state preceptor's hall. He asked nervously, "Oh no, Qiuyu fell into their hands. Qiuyu is in danger." Everyone looked at him with sympathy. Zhang Dequan asked, Why are you looking at me like that?" The old chancellor pushed the cup forward. "Drink a cup of green tea." Xiao Heng passed the plate of snacks in front of him. "Eat a piece of mung bean cake." Gu Yan opened his palm. "I'll give you a jade bottle." Zhang Dequan. The monarch was knocked unconscious by Imperial concubine Han at night. In the morning, concubine Han let him go to the court. No matter how one looked at it, something felt wrong. Judging from the matter of Qiuyu and Zhang Dequan, the harem should be controlled by concubine Han. But according to Steward Zheng's information, concubine Han wasn't released from the cold palace. In short, concubine Han used the monarch to do all this. Why would the monarch listen to concubine Han? Did concubine Han get hold of his weakness? Or was he controlled by concubine Han? Xiao Heng said, "My mother went to the palace to see the emperor. Wait for her to come back and listen to what she has to say." After half a month of cultivation, Sheng Guanyin had already recovered to be able to stand and walk. But in order to show her weakness, she still chose to enter the palace in a wheelchair. She went to the monarch's bedchamber to wait. However, what was strange was that the palace people didn't allow her to enter. She was the 3rd princess. Even if she was crippled, she could still lie in the monarch's bedchamber. How dare they stop her from entering? "What's your name? This princess has never seen you before." Sheng Guanyin sat in the wheelchair and faintly asked the little eunuch in front of her. The little eunuch smiled and said, "This slave's name is Huanxi. I was just transferred here." "Where's Zhang Dequan?" Sheng Guanyin asked. Huanxi smiled and said, "Eunuch Zhang was found to have an affair with a palace maid. He fled overnight. Now the one serving His Majesty is Chief Yu." Sheng Guanyin frowned and said, "Which Chief Yu?" Huanxi said, "Chief Yu Changpa." She seemed to have some impression of him. He used to serve the emperor, but he was not very favored. Why did he promote him? "What about Xiao Zhao?" she asked again. Huanxi sighed and said, "Xiao Zhao and eunuch Zhang are good friends. They were implicated and punished. They were transferred to the laundry room." Sheng Guanyin asked a few palace people who were usually in front of the emperor, but the result was that they were not there. The reason was the same as Xiao Zhao's. They were implicated and punished. This kind of phenomenon was not strange in the harem. But the fact that she was blocked outside the door was unusual. After all, whether it was a newcomer or an old one, they should have heard that she was very favored recently. Sheng Guanyin lightly said, "You blocked me outside. Are you not afraid that my father will blame you when he comes back?" Huanxi kneeled and reported, "This is His Majesty's order. No one is allowed to enter without permission. This slave is also under the order. 3rd princess, please understand." In the end, Sheng Guanyin didn't see the monarch. She went to the Hall of Harmony to find the monarch. Sheng Guanyin was confused. What kind of medicine is this old man selling in his gourd? Did Wang Xian and the others betray me? No, I'm not afraid of death. They are afraid of death. Sheng Guanyin left the palace with doubts. On the other side, Gu Jiao finished her official duties in the military camp and rode Black Wind King back to the Duke's mansion. Xiao Heng went to pick up little Jing Kong. The matter was reported by Gu Qingfeng and Gu Yan. When she heard that the monarch had an accident in the cold palace, Gu Jiao knew that what should come will come. In her dream, the monarch was also plotted against by imperial concubine Han in the cold palace. The person who did it was in Han. Under the control of imperial concubine Han and the Han family, the Great Yin fell into a civil strife more terrible than 15 years ago. Jin and Liang took the opportunity to wage war against the Great Yin. Under the internal and external troubles, the Great Yin suffered a devastating blow. Not only did they lose 12 cities, but they also lost countless outstanding children of aristocratic families. Mu Qingchen died in battle. Qing Feng died in battle. The 7 sons of Xianyuan died in battle. The Xianyuan army, which had been exhausted by the 3 years of civil war, couldn't turn the tide and was eventually wiped out. In her dream, imperial concubine Han imprisoned the monarch 6 years later. She didn't expect it to happen so early. Gu Jiao stared at Xiaoheng. The monarch is no longer the monarch of the past. Xiaoheng looked serious. What do you mean? Gu Jiao didn't say how she knew. She just told him everything in her dream. He was replaced. The person who replaced the monarch was carefully selected by Lady Han. Not only was the appearance very similar to the monarch, but even the voice and habits of the monarch were deliberately imitated. This was the biggest trump card in Lady Han's hand besides En Hun. That day, En Hun went to the outer city to see this person. Xiaoheng didn't ask where Gu Jiao got this information. He trusted her, he didn't doubt her and wouldn't force her to tell him things she didn't want to say. I didn't expect Imperial concubine Han to have such a chess piece, he said with a serious expression. Then the monarch, Gu Jiao said. The real monarch isn't dead. Lady Han couldn't bear to kill the monarch, she just imprisoned him. At this time, Lady Han didn't know that 3 months later, the monarch would die of illness in a cellar that never saw the light of day. She still lost him in the end. This was also the beginning of all the nightmares. Without the monarch to stabilize Lady Han and the Han family started a civil war. We have to snatch the monarch back, Gu Jiao said. The latest chapter of this book isn't finished yet. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. Novels are updated faster. Millions of novels are free to read. Novels with content that can't be found on the internet are all available here. https://www.zhbqg.com/89642_8964226/10618031. HTML Genius memorized this website's address in 1 second. www.zhbqg.com Bikugo mobile reading website. zhbqg.com. Chapter 802. The latest chapter of this book is not finished yet. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. Novels are updated faster. Millions of novels are free to read. Novels with connotations that can't be found on the internet are available here. In fact, even if Gu Jiao didn't say what happened in the dream, Xiaoheng also understood that the emperor can't fall into the hands of Han clan. They already had a falling out with the Han clan. The Han clan used the emperor's power to deal with them first. Gu Jiao and Xiaoheng returned to the state preceptor's hall in the Duke Fu's carriage. When Shang Guanyan heard that the emperor was plotted against by imperial concubine Han, she didn't have any reaction. When she heard that the emperor in the imperial court was a fake, she didn't have much reaction. But when she heard Gu Jiao ask her where the dog hole in the cold palace was, she suddenly exploded. What do you want to do? Gu Jiao truthfully said. I want to snatch the emperor. Shang Guanyan's face sank. No, it's too dangerous. She firmly refused to sacrifice her own daughter-in-law's life for a scum father, who killed her mother's entire family. In the beginning, he wanted to marry the Han clan. He wanted to raise the 10 great clans to encircle and suppress the Xianyuan clan. But now, did he suffer a backlash? Xiaoheng said. But if the fake emperor abolished Jiaojiao, it's also very dangerous. Shang Guanyan frowned. With Han clan's temperament, it's indeed possible for her to do such a thing. The fake emperor has just ascended the throne. Outsiders can't see the clues, but they themselves will feel a little guilty. Therefore, it's unlikely for them to do things that are very different from their original temperament. For example, they will touch her and Shang Guanqing. It's hard to say about others. Shang Guanyan asked her son to bring a pen and paper. She drew a map of the cold palace for Gu Jiao. Gu Qingfeng went there last time, but he was outside the dog hole and didn't go in. After you go in from here, you have to go around Imperial Concubine Wan's territory to reach Han clan's courtyard. But, did she really hide the emperor in the cold palace? Are you sure? The news Little Nine heard, it can't be false. Gu Jiao said without changing her expression. Oh, that bird. Shang Guanyan no longer doubted. Xiaoheng looked deeply at Gu Jiao but did not expose her. After dark, Gu Jiao and Gu Qingfeng changed into night clothes, put on masks, and went to the cold palace under the cover of the night. Gu Qingfeng easily found the dog hole from last time. Gu Jiao was still wondering why Gu Qingfeng didn't directly take Shangguan Yan to climb over the wall since his qinggong was so good. But when she came to the corner of the wall, she saw the seemingly invisible silk thread and understood. Gu Qingfeng whispered, "The silk of the snowfield silkworm is incomparably sharp. If you accidentally bump into it, you'll be cut into pieces. I don't know how high the highest silk is. I'm afraid that I won't be able to see it, and will only have half of my body left when I fly over. Looks like we can only drill." Gu Jiao said. "I'll go over first." Gu Jiao crawled over after making sure there was no danger before letting Gu Qingfeng crawl over as well. The two stood up and brushed off the dust on their bodies. Gu Qingfeng said, "By the way, the king should know that Shangguan Yan likes to drill this dog hole, but he didn't fill it up and left it for Shangguan Yan to go out and play? He loves her so much. Why did he hurt her in the first place?" Gu Jiao lightly said, "You don't have to guess a man's mind." Gu Qingfeng looked around and said to Gu Jiao, "That master must be guarding Han Shi's side. I'll lead him away in a while. You go and rescue the king." Gu Jiao said, "Can you lead him away?" Gu Qingfeng patted his small chest. "I'm Zhao country's #1 thief, Fei Shuang. Don't think that just because my martial arts are not as good as yours, I'm not as good as you in other aspects. You should learn it well, and watch how I lure him away." Now that there was no other way, Gu Jiao thought for a moment and seriously said, "You're not allowed to fight with him." Gu Qingfeng laughed and said, "Don't worry, I'm a thief, not a robber. I won't fight with people. Escaping is my strength. But I'll say the ugly words first. If that person is really as powerful as you described, I may not be able to hold on for long. An incense stick. You only have an incense stick's worth of time." Gu Jiao nodded her head. "I know." Gu Qingfeng turned around and left. "Gu Qingfeng, be careful." Gu Jiao called him. "If you're killed by him, I won't avenge you." Gu Qingfeng curled his lips. "Tiske, you have no conscience." Gu Qingfeng used his qinggong to fly toward Han Shi's courtyard. Gu Jiao quietly followed and closely watched the movements in the night. To be honest, she was a little unsure. And Han was after all a very powerful expert. Would he really fall for Gu Qingfeng's trick so easily? Wouldn't he have guessed that someone who didn't even dare to fight with him was trying to lure the tiger away from the mountain? Even if Han couldn't guess it, with Han Shi's palace scheming mind, would she fall for it? Han Shi wouldn't fall for it so easily. But Gu Qingfeng's luck was not bad. Han Shi coincidentally went to the cellar to visit the monarch, and Han guarded the courtyard alone. Gu Qingfeng concealed his aura. After coming to the Yan kingdom, not only did Gu Chongqing and Gu Jiao increase their strength, but Gu Qingfeng also trained his qinggong to be stronger than before after getting injured in fighting. He silently waited for his chance. Gu Jiao's prediction was right. An expert like Han wouldn't easily fall for the trick of luring him away, unless he wanted to kill Gu Qingfeng. Gu Qingfeng hid in the darkness for nearly a quarter of an hour. Suddenly Han turned and went to the toilet. "Now's the time." And Han unbuckled his belt. At this moment, one's vigilance would be greatly lowered. Gu Qingfeng suddenly shot out 3 plum blossom darts. F***CKU Master and Han. Go be an eunuch in Han. Gu Qingfeng had been secretly learning from Mistress Nan these days. And Han's hair stood on end as he felt a strong murderous aura. His muscles tensed up as he made a defensive response in a critical moment. Then he couldn't shout, "And Han!" No way, the sneak attack didn't succeed. He can even dodge like that. What kind of pervert is he? Aha! And Han charged towards Gu Qingfeng. Gu Qingfeng broke into a run. Damn it, how could he be so fast? Stupid girl. I can't hold on for more than half an hour, at most half an hour. Gu Jiao saw 2 figures flying into the night from behind the tree. She didn't dare to delay and quickly ran to Han Shi's courtyard. At this moment, Han Shi was holding an oil lamp in the cellar. Although it was a cellar, it still had all the furniture. It was just a bit simple and crude, looking more like a commoner's house. And the 2 of them looked like a couple from the commoners. The monarch had been drugged with bone-softening powder, and was lying weakly on the simple bed. Han Shi sat on a stool beside the bed and looked at him with a smile that wasn't a smile. Your Majesty, don't blame this concubine. This concubine already said that you forced this concubine. The monarch looked at her coldly. This was the first time Han Shi had drugged the monarch with bone-softening powder. The dosage was a bit too much, causing the monarch to not only be unable to move, even his throat was numb. Han Shi smiled and said, Your Majesty, don't worry. This concubine won't kill you. Sure. The monarch trembled as he bit out these two words. He never expected that this vicious woman would dare to imprison the Son of Heaven. This was even more shocking than the Xianyuan family's rebellion. In any case, the Xianyuan family had the backbone and the strength. But Han Shi was just a concubine in the harem. With the Son of Heaven missing, did she really think that no one would find out? As if she could see the mockery in the monarch's eyes, Han Shi faintly smiled and said, Your Majesty, don't worry. No one will know where you went. In fact, no one will find out that you went missing. The monarch looked at her with a face full of caution and confusion. Han Shi smiled meaningfully and said, Last night, Your Majesty came to this concubine's cold palace to sit for a while before returning. This morning, you went to court on time. In the afternoon, you gathered the military officials to discuss important matters. At night, you went to your own palace to read memorials for 2 hours. The monarch's expression changed. He stuttered. You. Han Shi's lips curled into a mocking smile. Yes, this concubine found someone to replace Your Majesty. Your Majesty didn't expect this, right? This concubine called Your Majesty to the cold palace to give Your Majesty one last chance. If Your Majesty had only said that you believed in me, I wouldn't have done it. In truth, I also considered giving Your Majesty a goo or drug, but those things will harm the body. This concubine's heart aches for Your Majesty, and can't bear for Your Majesty to suffer. The monarch's heart was filled with disgust. Why didn't he find out earlier that this poisonous woman was a lunatic? Han Shi took in the monarch's disgust. Her smile disappeared and she coldly said, Your Majesty, no matter how much you hate this concubine, no one will come to save Your Majesty. Your Majesty, take care of yourself. After saying this, she stood up and left with a cold face. Not long after she left, a small figure quietly flashed into the cellar. The monarch looked at the person who suddenly approached the bed with vigilance. Just as he was about to speak, Gu Jiao knocked him out with a stick. Monarch. Then Gu Jiao directly carried him on her shoulder and fled with a whoosh. Digression. Do you still have a monthly ticket? Vote for Jiao Jiao. The newest chapter of this book is not finished yet. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. Novels are updated even faster. Millions of novels are read for free. Novels that can't be found online are all here. https://www.zhhbqg.com/89642_8964286/1061791149. HTML Genius remembers this website's address in 1 second. www.zhhbqg.com Bikuga mobile reading website. zhhbqg.com. Chapter 803. The latest chapter of this book is not finished yet. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. Novels are updated faster. Millions of novels are free to read. Novels that can't be found online are all available here. It was a dark and windy night. Gu Chengfeng was being chased by An Hun. He knew that An Hun was powerful, but he wasn't weak either. Why was he getting closer and closer? It was already abnormal that he was getting closer and closer. Under normal circumstances, no one could run more than 10 feet away from An Hun, but Gu Chengfeng had already circled around the palace. But he couldn't hold on any longer. He was about to smoke. Forget it. Let's get out of the palace first. Gu Chengfeng jumped out of the main entrance of the harem and ran in the direction of the exit. An Hun chased after him relentlessly. Gu Chengfeng didn't expect to get rid of him now. If he could lure him out of the palace in the opposite direction, he could buy more time for that girl. Gu Chengfeng brought out his reincarnated energy and ran amok in the night. Finally, he leaped up and stepped through the last gate of the outer court. At this moment, and Hun was less than 20 feet away from him. Oh no, I can't hold on any longer. Please don't get caught. My martial arts skills are not enough to even fill the gaps between and Hun's teeth. However, there was a saying in the world. What you fear will happen. Just as Gu Qingfeng gritted his teeth and was about to break through his limit, and Hun came behind him and grabbed his collar with his bone-cold hand. Gu Qingfeng's heart skipped a beat. He was someone who had experienced the Battle of Yuegu City. He had fought with the Chun army for 5 days and 5 nights, but he had never felt that he had really stepped into the palace of the King of Hell. It was as if the hand that grabbed him wasn't a death warrior's hand, but the ghost claw of the King of Hell. I can't die, I can't die. I haven't lived long enough. I can only use my last move. The seemingly complicated and numerous thoughts flashed through his mind in an instant. With a swish, he took out something from his bosom. And Hun thought that he was going to assassinate him with a hidden weapon. Who would have thought that through the other party's back, he saw the other party use something to wipe his mouth? What move is this? The next second, Gu Qingfeng turned his head and pouted his red lips. He leaned towards and Hun affectionately. Trojan horse, and Hun. F***ck. And Hun's breath stagnated, and his meridians started to circulate in reverse. The true qi in his dantian was extinguished as if a bucket of ice water had been poured on it. His breath was blocked, and he fell down with a clatter. In the process of falling, he threw Gu blazing hot lips Qingfeng away in disgust and horror. The all-powerful Lord and Hun had never been so frightened before. What kind of shameless opponent was this? Back in the day, he was also a very decent little wind, but the group of people in the courtyard. No, not to mention the people, even the horses were not decent. He was influenced by the company he kept. However, and Hun was an Hun after all. Even though his soul had been sent flying by the lightning, he still relied on his strong instinct to recover his inner energy the moment he landed. He struck the ground with his palm and borrowed the force to do a somersault in the air before landing firmly on the ground. As for Gu Qingfeng, he borrowed the force of him throwing him out just now and disappeared with a whoosh. In the night, a certain someone's annoying voice could be heard. Thank you, Lord and Hun. And Hun did not chase after him. He knew the force of his throw. If he chased after him, he would be too far away from the palace. He turned and returned to the cold palace. Just as he entered the courtyard of the cold palace, he saw Han Shi angrily walking towards him. Where did you go just now? The king was taken away by someone. And Hun said calmly, I know, I will get him back. After Gu Jiao carried the king out of Han Shi's courtyard, she went straight to the dog hole that led to the outside of the palace. As the king was knocked unconscious, he could not drill the hole himself, so Gu Jiao could only stuff him in. Who knew that the king's body would get fat, and he would be stuck in the dog hole? Gu Jiao frowned seriously and kicked his dragon head, kicking him over without hesitation. After that, Gu Jiao crawled over herself. She did not know how long Gu Qingfeng could delay, but it was best that she did not waste any time. She carried the king and sprinted towards the planned location. There the Black Wind King was already in place. However, things did not go as she wished. Before she could run a mile, and Hun caught up with her. She saw with her own eyes that An Hun used his sword to cut open the snow silk on the wall, and jumped over elegantly. He was indeed an expert. His skills were amazing. Gu Jiao could not escape from An Hun alone. Now that she had to carry the king, she was no match for An Hun. What was Gu Qingfeng doing? Had it really been a quarter of an hour? Gu Qingfeng. It was clearly the king who was stuck in the dog hole for half a day. Gu Jiao felt that she was doomed. An Hun's murderous aura was approaching her quickly. However, because she was carrying the king, An Hun did not kill her. He only wanted to snatch the king back. Gu Jiao threw out 3 black fire pearls. An Hun's eyes narrowed. He paused in midair, and turned around to avoid the pearls. He lightly tapped his foot and landed on a tree. The black fire pearls landed on the ground, and made a series of explosive sounds. Gu Jiao felt a toothache. Shouldn't an expert like you catch hidden weapons with your bare hands? Why are you dodging? An Hun pulled out a long vine from the tree and threw it at Gu Jiao. The long vine wrapped around Gu Jiao's slender waist. Gu Jiao was pulled over by a strong force. She had 2 choices. She could either surrender, and be captured by An Hun together with the monarch, or she could throw the monarch down. An Hun would abandon her to save the monarch, and she would take the opportunity to escape. She did not want to die. However, she would not give up the king that she had already captured. She immediately pressed down on the dagger at her waist. However, before she could pull it out, An Hun slapped the dagger out of her hand. This guy. In the nick of time, a figure suddenly appeared from the side and cut the long vine in half. Gu Jiao and the king fell to the ground. The person holding the sword blocked in front of the two and said through the veil, "You guys leave first." It was Yi Qing's voice. Gu Jiao looked at Yi Qing, who was dressed in black, and then looked at the 4 men of sacrifice that came with Yi Qing. She roughly understood that it was the state teacher's palace that made their move. "Be careful," Gu Jiao reminded. "I will." Yi Qing flew up with her sword and attacked An Hun together with the 4 men of sacrifice from the Imperial Preceptor Palace. Gu Jiao took the chance to grab the king, who had fallen to the ground, and ran. Behind them came the sound of weapons clashing. The whole street seemed to be filled with killing intent. The eldest disciple of the state teacher's palace and the 4 men of sacrifice were a terrifying force, but to say that they could kill An Hun was still impossible. Set up the formation. Trap him. Under Yi Qing's order, the 5 of them formed a formation and surrounded An Hun. An Hun coldly looked at the 5 who came out of nowhere and sarcastically curled his lips. "You think you can stop me with just a few of you?" Yi Qing coldly said. "Whether I can stop you or not, you'll know once you try. Or are you scared? That's right, you colluded with the deposed concubine and imprisoned the king. You have committed a crime worthy of all 9 generations of your family. If you're willing to surrender, then maybe I'll consider letting you go." An Hun coldly laughed. Stalling for time? Useless. As soon as he finished, An Hun's figure flashed and suddenly appeared in front of Yi Qing. His speed was too fast, to the point that Yi Qing could only see a blur. Before he could react, Yi Qing had already been sent flying by An Hun. And almost at the same time, An Hun used the remaining qi in his body to send the other 4 men of sacrifice flying. An Hun's goal was to take back the king, so he didn't waste too much energy on Yi Qing and the others. Yi Qing fell onto a roof, covered his chest and spat out a mouthful of blood. Damn! He escaped so quickly. Xiao Lulang, you can only rely on yourself from now on. Achoo! Gu Jiao was running just fine with the king on her shoulder, when she suddenly sneezed out of nowhere, stepped on something slippery, and fell flat on her face. No way, right? Was someone talking about her again? Xiao Lulang, this name is poisonous. Gu Jiao got up with a black face. Just as she was about to grab the king and continue running, Gu Qingfeng used his qinggong to catch up. "Hey, are you okay?" Gu Qingfeng asked her. Gu Jiao, with grass all over her body, shook her messy hair. "I'm fine. Yi Qing and them are coming. I don't think they can hold them off for too long. You take the king and leave, we'll split up." Letting Gu Qingfeng lure An Hun away was because only he could do it. Now letting Gu Qingfeng take the king away was also because only he could take him away. What Gu Jiao didn't say was that she sprained her leg from the fall just now. Gu Qingfeng frowned. "But you?" Gu Jiao took out a bone whistle. "Black Wind King will come get me, hurry up and leave." The reason why she didn't use the bone whistle before was because she was worried about exposing her location and attracting the Black Wind King, and Shi Yi attracting An Hun. Now there was no other choice. Gu Qingfeng gritted his teeth. "I know what you want to do, but this time, I won't listen to you." An Hun wasn't Han Yi. Once he fell into his hands, there was no chance of survival. Gu Qingfeng, with one hand holding onto the king and the other holding onto Gu Jiao, used his qinggong to jump. But right at this moment, An Hun arrived. An Hun squinted his eyes, aimed at Gu Qingfeng's legs, and slashed down. The newest chapter of this book is not finished yet. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. Novels are updated faster. Millions of novels are free to read. Novels that can't be found on the internet are all here. https://www.zhhbqg.com/89642_896422826/1061564662 HTML Genius memorized this site's address. www.zhhbqg.com Bkuj mobile reading website. zhhbqg.com. Chapter 804. This book's newest chapter isn't finished yet. For more interesting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. Novels are updated even faster. Millions of novels are free to read. Novels that can't be found on the internet are all here. Gu Jiao felt the sharp killing intent and sword chi and frowned. Watch out. It was already too late to dodge. So Gu Qingfeng clenched his teeth and pushed the two of them towards the roof in front of him. It was better for the sword chi to land on his leg alone than for Gu Jiao to be injured with him. But the expected pain didn't come. On the other side of the roof, a navy blue figure fell from the sky and also sent out a sword chi, protecting Gu Qingfeng, who almost lost his legs. Gu Qingfeng turned around and was instantly dumbfounded. Big brother? Gu Chongqing sent out a palm and sent him to the roof where Gu Jiao and the king landed. You guys hurry and leave, he lightly said, and vigilantly looked at the black-robed man 2 meters away. Gu Qingfeng was so shocked that he couldn't even close his mouth. Big. Why is Big Brother here? Wasn't he lying in the ICU this whole time? When did he wake up? How did he know what he was doing tonight? Gu Jiao frowned, as if she was also a bit confused, but not as confused as Gu Qingfeng. Or maybe it was because she was a bit more calm. It had been almost a month since Gu Chongqing was injured. Although his body's stats were gradually stabilizing, he still hadn't woken up in front of her. The state teacher also said that he hadn't woken up. Did he just wake up? Then, thinking of Yi Qing's arrival, Gu Jiao guessed that the state teacher had somehow found out about her plan to break into the cold palace, so he arranged for Yi Qing to come help her, while also having Gu Chongqing, who had woken up, come save her. Was the state teacher and Gu Chongqing this close? Let's go, Gu Jiao decisively said. Gu Qingfeng worriedly looked at Gu Chongqing's back. But my big brother, Gu Jiao calmly said. And Hun's target is the king. As long as we take the king away, and Hun will immediately chase after us. In other words, this was the only way for Gu Chongqing to escape. Gu Qingfeng turned around and looked at his brother for the last time. He wiped his red eyes sadly and grabbed Gu Jiao and the king. With a leap, he disappeared into the endless night. After confirming that their auras had disappeared, Gu Chongqing heaved a sigh of relief. The medicine I gave you can temporarily suppress the aura in your body so that others won't be able to detect the changes in you. However, you have yet to recover from your serious injuries. Even if I help you with your rehabilitation and training in secret, it will still be difficult for you to reach your ideal strength in a short period of time. The state teachers Gu Jiao Gu Qingfeng's Gu Qingfeng, Ti Gu Jiao Gu He, Ti He Gu, Gut, Ti, and Heat, Ti. He couldn't fight with An Hun, or else the medicine would be consumed faster. An Hun squinted his eyes under the mask. Ah, I remember now, you're Long Out Yin. You didn't die after being hit by my sword, you're really lucky. Gu Chongqing coldly said. I'm lucky, but your life might not be. An Hun sneered. Even if my sword didn't take your life, it would have destroyed your foundation. Let me think, how can you stand in front of me in perfect condition? Did the state teacher use poison on you and turn you into a death warrior? Gu Chongqing's pupil shrank. An Hun continued. But it's strange, you don't have the aura of a death warrior. Taking poison and becoming a death warrior were not necessarily related. There were 2 types of death warriors. One type was to learn the death warrior's skills from a young age, like the dragon shadow guards and most of the death warriors in the market. The other method was to take a poison that couldn't be cured, and then learn the death warrior's skills. An Hun and Sky Splitter were this type of death warrior. The advantage of the first method was that it was relatively safe, but the disadvantage was that it was limited by age. People who were over 5 years old could not learn it, and their strength was not as strong as the second method. The advantage of the second method was that it was not limited by age, but the disadvantage was that 99 out of 100 people who were poisoned died. It's hard for a normal person to survive after being poisoned, and with your injuries, It's even more impossible for you to survive the poison. But if it wasn't for the poison, how could you recover? And Hun's curiosity was completely aroused. Tell me the answer, and I'll let you go. Gu Chongqing said meaningfully. You really want to know? Why don't you answer a few of my questions first, and if I'm satisfied with your answers, I'll tell you. Young man, it's not good to delay time. And Hun was not a fool, and he admitted that he was curious about the miracle on Long Outyen, but he would not be led by the nose by him. He looked calmly at Gu Chongqing. I won't kill you today, but after I settle the matter at hand, I'll go to the State Preceptor Hall to get the answer from you. You want to leave? It's not that easy. Gu Chongqing dodged and blocked An Hun's way with his sword. But An Hun was too fast, and before he could do anything, An Hun had already sheathed his sword back into the scabbard. Then, An Hun flashed past like a hurricane, and disappeared into the night. Gu Chongqing looked at An Hun's back view, and secretly tightened his grip on the sword in his hand. In the end he agreed to split up with Gu Jiao. After all, An Hun's target was the king, and as long as he left with the king, An Hun would definitely catch up with him. It would be much safer for the brat to leave on her own. That was his plan, but he did not know that not long after he left, Gu Jiao took out her bone whistle and blew it. Gu Chengfeng froze. Oh no! He forgot that this brat had a whistle in her hand. It's over, it's over. An Hun will definitely chase after her when he hears the whistle. Gu Chengfeng turned around, and wanted to save Gu Jiao. Wait, I can't do that. If I bring the king and An Hun brings him back, he will have no qualms and will definitely kill us on the spot. Run. The further the better. An Hun might not waste time on her if he realized that the king was not in her hands. Gu Chengfeng clenched his fists tightly, and with the king on his back, he gritted his teeth and ran forward. An Hun heard Gu Jiao's bone whistle, and indeed changed his path to chase after Gu Jiao. His qinggong was excellent, and he walked on the steep roofs as if he was walking on flat ground. He quickly saw the small figure shuttling back and forth in the alley, and with a cold smile he jumped and landed steadily in front of Gu Jiao. Gu Jiao suddenly stopped in her tracks. She turned around and continued to run. An Hun easily jumped over her head and blocked her path again. Gu Jiao's face darkened. It was so troublesome to not know qinggong. An Hun asked, "Where are the two of them hiding?" Gu Jiao said, "Find them yourself if you have the ability." An Hun slowly walked towards her with a murderous aura. "Brat, killing you is just a matter of moving my fingers. If you know what's good for you, I'll give you a quick death." Gu Jiao laughed. "If you kill me, my men will also kill the king." An Hun's footsteps paused slightly. Gu Jiao's acting skills reached an unprecedented level at this critical moment, and she displayed her superb acting skills. "I want the king because I want to save my own life, but if I can't save my life, then the king's life won't matter. If you don't believe me, you can try to kill me, but I can guarantee you that the king will die with me." An Hun looked at her deeply, as if he was judging whether she was telling the truth or not. After a while he laughed out loud. "Brat, you won't. I'll say it one last time, hand him over, or I'll kill you." Gu Jiao raised her eyebrows. "If I hand him over, you won't kill me?" An Hun said, "I'll kill you too." Gu Jiao crossed her arms. "So, why should I hand the king over to you?" As she spoke, she seemed to inadvertently look at an abandoned horse shed on the right. Inside, An Hun smashed the roof of the shed, but there was no one inside. His face turned cold. "Brat, you tricked me." "Wait." Gu Jiao raised her hand and calmly signaled him to stop. "I can hand over the king of Yen, but I have a condition. Let me see your face under the mask." In the 6 countries, no one has seen the faces of An Hun and Shi Tian. I want to see it. Anyway, I'm going to die soon, so you can fulfill my small wish. Gu Jiao was stalling for time. Black Wind King was on his way here. When Black Wind King arrived, she would have a 50% chance of escaping. An Hun said disdainfully, "Brat, you don't have the right to negotiate with me. My patience is really running out. If you don't tell me, I'll kill you first, and then find the king. I don't believe that your accomplice can bring the king far." Gu Jiao pointed behind him. "Ah, Shi Tian." An Hun didn't believe that Shi Tian would appear, but this name made him care too much. He almost couldn't control himself and instinctively looked back. When he realized that he had been tricked again, Gu Jiao had already thrown out a bag of black fire pearls. He was blown back more than 10 steps. Gu Jiao took the opportunity to turn out of the alley. Boss! Gu Jiao saw Black Wind King running towards her. Her eyes lit up, and she even forgot about the pain in her leg. And Han was completely enraged. He chased after her and slammed his palm on the wall beside him. The wall that had not been repaired for a long time suddenly collapsed and fell towards Gu Jiao's face. This time, no one will be able to save you. And Han had just finished his words when a black figure flew out from the night. A slender and strong arm grabbed Gu Jiao and flew out of the ruins. His speed was too fast, and Gu Jiao was blown in the face. After he steadily landed on the ground, Gu Jiao looked at the long shadow on the ground which was illuminated by the moonlight and expressionlessly spat out a mouthful of dust. Long time no see. Long Yi. Digression. It seems that many people said that they would give tickets to Long Yi as soon as he appeared. The latest chapter of this book is not finished yet. For more wonderful content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. Novels are updated faster. Millions of novels are free to read. Novels with connotations that can't be found on the internet are all available here. https://www.zhbqg.com/89642_8964286/1061555101. HTML Genius will remember this site's address in 1 second. www.zhbqg.com Bikuj mobile reading website. zhbqg.com. Chapter 805. The latest chapter of this book is not finished yet. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. Novels are updated faster. Millions of novels are free to read. Novels with connotations that can't be found on the internet are all available here. Long Yi placed Gu Jiao in a proper position as if he was placing his own little doll. He didn't forget to use his internal force to smooth out the little ahog on the little doll's head. Long Yi, why are you here? Gu Jiao asked him. Obviously Long Yi wouldn't answer. Forget it. This problem can be slowly studied later. The most important thing now is to deal with Han, this troublesome guy. Gu Jiao pointed at Han who was not far away and seriously said, Long Yi, beat him. I can't beat you. I'll let Long Yi beat you. And Han obviously didn't expect Gu Jiao to suddenly change her style. But thinking about it, this kid was originally shameless, otherwise he wouldn't have repeatedly played with him. But who was this big guy that suddenly appeared? Long Yi was wearing a black robe and a ghost mask. Other than Gu Jiao, Princess Xinyang and Xiaoheng, no one else had seen his adult appearance. But the aura emitted from his body was faintly familiar to Han. And Han slightly narrowed his eyes. Why? Could it be because the other party was also a death warrior? Long Yi didn't move. He tilted his head and looked at Gu Jiao in confusion. Then he reached out his hand and pinched Gu Jiao's cheek. Gu Jiao opened her mouth and said incoherently, What are you doing? Long Yi looked at her throat with a confused face. Gu Jiao understood. After coming to Yen country, she used the voice of a teenager most of the time to avoid being exposed. Long Yi had never heard this voice. He thought that there was something wrong with her voice. Long Yi looked left and right, and saw that Gu Jiao's cheeks were numb. She wanted to close her little mouth, but she was unable to. She said, I'm not fine, you should beat salt people first. Give the opponent a little bit of basic respect, okay? That's not a small shrimp. He's the #1 death warrior of the 6 countries in Han. He has such a strong murderous aura. Why do you not seem to put him in your eyes? And Han looked at Long Yi and asked indifferently, Who are you? Gu Jiao took Long Yi's hand away. Long Yi turned around and looked at Han coldly. Gu Jiao stuck out her little head from behind Long Yi and said with incomparable arrogance, Your uncle. And Han didn't argue with the child. His gaze landed on Long Yi's face again. Your aura feels familiar. I feel like I've seen you somewhere before. But since you don't want to tell me, I'll find the answer myself. Finished speaking, he suddenly used his internal force. Then raising his palm, he rushed towards Long Yi. The dragon shadow guards of Zhao country were all equipped with long swords, and Long Yi was naturally no exception. With a shake of his hand, he lifted the long sword from his waist into the air. Then he flew up and waved his hand. The long sword and scabbard were inserted into the bluestone ground where he had been standing, like a shield protecting Gu Jiao. With this as the boundary, those who break into this boundary will die. And Han looked at the long sword and scabbard that were inserted into the bluestone ground. It wasn't strange for the long sword to be inserted into the ground. After all, it was an offensive weapon. But the scabbard was blunt, and it was actually inserted deeply into the ground. From this, it could be seen how strong the opponent was. He slightly narrowed his eyes. Then let's see how powerful you are. Black Wind King rushed over from behind Gu Jiao. It stopped beside Gu Jiao and sniffed Gu Jiao's aura. I'm not injured. Gu Jiao touched its head. She only sprained her right leg slightly, nothing serious. One person and one horse quietly watched the duel in the alley. A true expert never needed too complicated and flashy moves, especially a death warrior whose mission was to kill people. Every move was simple and crude, directly hitting the vital points. Long Yi used his fist, while Han used his palm. Long Yi's fist was aimed at Han's chest. With Long Yi's strength, he could instantly punch through Han's chest and make his heart explode. Of course, Han wouldn't let Long Yi have his way so easily. He used his palm to block Long Yi's fist. But Long Yi's strength was beyond his imagination. He thought that he could shake Long Yi off with his palm, but who would have thought that Long Yi would use his unstoppable strength to force Han to slide back dozens of steps? The soles of his shoes were almost smoking from the friction. Han was forced to the entrance of the alley. He stepped on the wall behind him and used the force to jump over Long Yi's head. He arrived behind Long Yi and planned to sneak attack Long Yi's heart with his palm. Long Yi turned around and punched. Han was sent flying by Long Yi's strength. Gu Jiao, wah! When Han was about to hit the roof, he stretched out his hand and grabbed the corner of the roof. His body twisted a few times to dissipate the huge force. Then, with a forceful pull of his arm, he did a side flip and landed steadily on the roof. He narrowed his eyes and looked at Long Yi, who was in the alley. A trace of disbelief flashed through his eyes. Although he had only used less than 50% of his strength, one should know that in these years he had only used 30% of his strength at most. It was the first time in 20 years that someone could send him flying with a punch when he had used almost half of his strength. Who are you? He asked coldly. After Long Outyin, Han was very curious about this dark-clothed death warrior. As an expert, other than constantly improving his strength, he also had to study different opponents. Long Yi didn't answer him. Within the 6 countries, only the dragon shadow guards of Zhao country were trained to be silent death warriors under the special request of the late emperor. The rest of the death warriors were not like this. Therefore, in Han's eyes, Long Yi's silence meant that Long Yi was too lazy to talk to him. Han felt that he had been offended. Gu Jiao sat on the back of the horse and calmly looked at Han, who was on the roof. She smiled faintly and said, "Hey, the one called Han. Why aren't you fighting? Are you afraid? If you obediently kowtow to me and admit defeat, I might consider giving you a quick death." Han snorted and looked at Gu Jiao. "Kid, your tone is too arrogant. I only used less than 50% of my strength just now. Do you really think that a death warrior that you casually invited from outside can be this lord's opponent?" Gu Jiao raised her eyebrows. "This lord? You don't have much strength, but you talk big." This was what Han had mocked Gu Jiao before. "You are young, but you talk big." Now Gu Jiao was arrogant and domineering. Han coldly said, "Kid, don't be complacent too early. After I kill him, the next one to kill is you." Gu Jiao turned her head and looked at Long Yi. "Long Yi, he is fierce to me." Han. Long Yi's eyes were cold. He fiercely stomped on the ground and rushed towards Han, who was on the roof. This time, Han did not deliberately hide his strength like before. He used 70% of his strength all of a sudden. The two of them fought from the roof to the alley, and from the alley to the roof. Fortunately, this was an old street that was going to be demolished and no one lived there. Otherwise, such a big movement would have startled everyone. The more Han fought, the stranger he felt. Why is this person's fighting style so familiar? Have I fought with him before? But such a powerful opponent, I should have some impression of him. Gu Jiao seriously observed the fight between experts. It seems that they are evenly matched, but Long Yi's stamina is obviously more powerful. Long Yi did not even take a breath, but Han's breathing and rhythm are somewhat disrupted. He is really worthy of being called Long Yi. Han received another punch from Long Yi, but Long Yi also received half of Han's palm. Why was it only half of Han's palm? Because Long Yi quickly retreated. Half of the strength did not fall on Long Yi's body. But this exchange of blows was not without any gains. The cuff of Long Yi's sleeve was torn, and a small black thing fell out. Han turned his hand to catch it, and when he looked carefully he was stunned. This is... Long Yi kicked the back of Han's hand, and the jade ring was shaken into the air. Long Yi snatched the jade ring back, and put it back into his bosom. Han did not care about his broken hand, and asked with a frown. Where did this jade ring come from? Where did its owner go? Long Yi's reply was a heavy punch. Chapter 806. The latest chapter of this book is not finished yet. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. Novels are updated faster. Millions of novels are free to read. Novels with content that can't be found on the internet are all here. This was obviously not the Shirtian in his memory. What happened to Shirtian? Why did he seem to be a different person? Also, the way Shirtian looked at him was also very strange, as if he didn't recognize him at all. It didn't make sense that only he felt familiar with Shirtian, but Shirtian didn't recognize him at all. Long Yi took back the mask and put it on, then punched again. Han couldn't take his fist again. It didn't matter if he took a few punches when he was Shirtian, but if he knew, he wouldn't dare to take it again. He dodged and looked at Long Yi with a frown. Are you crazy? It's me. Gu Jiao made a strange sound. From the beginning of the fight between Long Yi and Han, she was basically sure that Long Yi was Han's only opponent, Shirtian. But Han's question was very strange. It sounded like Han knew Long Yi, and Long Yi should also know Han? Did Long Yi forget the matters of the past? So he didn't recognize Han. Gu Jiao sized up Han, who specialized in defense, and muttered, Han, this guy's morale is very low. It seems that he suffered a lot of beatings from Shirtian in the past. After Han found out that the opponent was Shirtian, he indeed panicked for a moment. This was a fear hidden in his bones. If he hadn't been beaten 100 times, he wouldn't be able to have this reaction. But there was also a saying in the world. Now is not the same as before. Shirtian wasn't the Shirtian of 20 years ago, and Han was also no longer the Han of 20 years ago. In these 20 years, Han didn't relax for a moment. On the other hand, Shirtian seemed to have forgotten his previous techniques. His killing intent was greatly reduced, and his strength was also a lot weaker. As this thought flashed, Han gradually calmed down. Just now, he didn't kill him out of curiosity, and then he was afraid of himself, so he restrained his hands and feet. Now that he thought it through, Shirtian wasn't so scary anymore. No matter what happened to Shirtian, the current Shirtian was no longer his opponent. Han landed on the roof of a house and coldly looked at Long Yi, who was in the alley. This is not the duel I wanted. Defeating the current you won't make me happy, but since you insist on protecting that brat and becoming my enemy, then don't blame me for taking advantage of your precarious situation. Die Heaven Splitter. Sky Splitter? Long Yi's brain suddenly buzzed. Confusion appeared in his eyes for a moment. Long Yi, be careful. Gu Jiao reminded him. Unfortunately, it was too late. Han's palm landed solidly on Long Yi's chest. Long Yi was sent flying, and as if thrown sandbag, he heavily fell on the ground, then slid all the way to the corner of the wall, and collided with the ice-cold and hard wall, making a hole in the wall. Han flew up and arrived in front of Long Yi. He stretched out his hand and pulled Long Yi out from the hole, and kicked him to the ground. Shirtian, without the slaughter chi, you are really weak. After he finished speaking, he kicked Long Yi again. Long Yi looked at the sky in a daze and didn't dodge. Gu Jiao. Oh no, Long Yi heard Shi Tian's name and crashed. Gu Jiao took out a small mechanical box made by Gu Xiaoshun from her bosom and threw it towards An Hun. Gu Xiaoshun's talent was not bad. Although this mechanical box was not as powerful as the one made by Master Lu, it still grazed An Hun's neck. A string of blood splattered out, and a dense smell of blood filled An Hun's entire nose. He put down his foot that was about to step on Long Yi, and coldly turned around and looked at Gu Jiao. Brat, since you are in a hurry to die, I will help you. Gu Jiao looked at An Hun, who suddenly became serious, and blankly blinked her eyes. No need. An Hun pushed his qinggong to the extreme, and his black robe fluttered in the night wind. He tiptoed, and just as he was about to pass by Long Yi's sword and scabbard, a terrifying aura suddenly approached him from behind. His eyebrows jumped, and subconsciously turned his head. He saw that Long Yi, who should have been beaten by him without any strength to fight back, actually stood up and scathed. Long Yi's speed was so fast that only an afterimage could be seen. In a blink of an eye, Long Yi had already passed An Hun, and arrived in front of Gu Jiao. Those who cross this boundary die. Long Yi grabbed An Hun's neck, lifted him up high, and mercilessly threw him to the ground. An Hun didn't know how many bones were broken, and his internal organs were also injured. He spat out a mouthful of blood on the spot. This was impossible. Impossible. He obviously didn't have Shi Tian's killing intent, so why was he still not his opponent? He forgot his killing instinct, but he had the power to protect. The reunion 20 years later ended with An Hun's crushing defeat, but it was not that easy for Long Yi to kill An Hun. The one who could kill An Hun was Shi Tian, who only had killing instinct. Because only in front of Shi Tian, he had a fatal weakness. Shi Tian, I lost today, but I won't always lose to you. See you later. An Hun covered his painful chest, and threw a black fire pearl at Long Yi. Using the dense fog after the explosion, he used qinggong to escape. Gu Jiao touched her chin. So this guy also has a black fire pearl on him, no wonder he knew to avoid it. But his black fire pearl is not the same as mine, his is more like a smoke bomb. Later I will also make a few of them. Long Yi. Gu Jiao turned over and dismounted, and the moment she landed on the ground, she found that her sprained right leg was already numb. She used her left leg to jump over, and said to Long Yi, "Let me see if you are injured." Long Yi's body had some scratches and bruises, but no internal injuries. Gu Jiao said, "I didn't bring a first aid kit. I will clean your wounds when we get back." Long Yi's gaze fell on her leg. She curved her lips and said, "It's numb." Long Yi nodded his head, bent down, and picked her up. Gu Jiao. Gu Jiao decided to go back the way she came, and look for Gu Changqing and Yi Qing. She hoped that they were okay. Gu Jiao's head and feet were facing down, and she said with an expressionless face, "I want to ride a horse. Being picked up by you makes me dizzy." Long Yi heard, "Ha ha ha, ride a horse dizzy." Then Gu Jiao was picked up by him the whole way. When Gu Jiao found Gu Changqing had already fainted on the ground. Gu Jiao took his pulse and checked his body. When she found that there were no new injuries on his body, she was secretly relieved. Gu Jiao didn't know that An Hun was curious about Gu Changqing's recovery, and thought that An Hun was too lazy to waste time on Gu Changqing, so he directly left. Long Yi grabbed Gu Changqing and placed him on the back of Black Wind King. Very quickly they met Yi Qing again. Yi Qing's group of 5 were actually injured, and their injuries weren't light. This was very confusing. Why did An Hun beat up Yi Qing, but not Gu Changqing? Was it because of looks? Gu Jiao returned to the teacher hall, called a carriage, and brought Yi Qing's group back. Gu Chengfeng was already waiting at the Qilin Hall. Seeing Gu Jiao return safely, the stone in his heart fell to the ground. He was just about to ask Gu Jiao how she got away, when in a blink of an eye, he saw Long Yi behind Gu Jiao. He was shocked. What's going on? Why is Long Yi here? Gu Jiao spread out her hands. I also want to know. Unfortunately, Long Yi couldn't speak, couldn't write, and couldn't even communicate with others. Wait a minute, if An Hun could speak, then Long Yi should have been able to too. Was it because he lost his memory, plus the fact that Zhaoguo's shadow guards couldn't speak, so he became like this? Long Yi began to look room by room. Gu Jiao knew he was looking for Xiaoheng. Gu Jiao still didn't know how Long Yi came to Yin Empire. If he came alone, then how did he find the right way? He didn't even remember who he was, so he shouldn't remember the way back to Yin Empire. If he didn't come alone, then who sent him here? So far, he didn't show any intention of meeting up with anyone. Intuition told Gu Jiao that Long Yi wasn't sent by Princess Xinyang to protect her and Xiaoheng. But no matter what Long Yi's purpose was in Yin Empire, he didn't forget his little master. Looking at him patiently looking for Xiaoheng in every room, Gu Jiao walked over, pulled his sleeve and said to him, "Aheng is not here, I'll let Gu Chengfeng take you to find him." Gu Chengfeng quivered and pointed at himself. "Why me?" Being alone with Long Yi, this kind of big shot was very scary, okay? Gu Chengfeng cleared his throat and asked, "Aren't you going back to Duke Mansion?" Gu Jiao said, "I still have something to do." Gu Jiao finished treating Long Yi's injuries, then let Gu Chengfeng take him and the unconscious monarch to the carriage to Duke Mansion. She went to the intensive care unit to see Gu Changqing. From Gu Changqing's physical strength just now, it didn't seem like he had just woken up tonight. He must have woken up a long time ago, and secretly did something behind her back. Since he's living here, then there must be some clues here. Gu Jiao began to rummage through the bedside table, medicine cabinet, and even under the bed. Needless to say, she really found something that didn't belong to this ward. Gu Jiao took out a small box hidden in the bedside table, opened it, and found some strange bottles and a few yellowing books inside. Gu Jiao looked and frowned. Introduction to Death Soldiers, Secrets to Success for Death Soldiers, 10 Days to Teach You to Become a Qualified Death Soldier, Self-Cultivation for Death Soldiers. What kind of nonsense is this? Just at this moment, Lord Imperial Tutor walked in. Gu Jiao casually picked up a book and waved it, indifferently looking at him. Lord Imperial Tutor was caught red-handed, lightly coughed and said, "I can explain. The latest chapter of this book is not finished. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. Novels are updated even faster. Millions of novels are free to read. Novels with connotations that can't be found online are all here. https://www.zhbqg.com/89642_896428261061061333264. HTML Genius will remember this site's address in 1 second. www.zhbqg.com Bikugo mobile reading website. zhbqg.com. Chapter 807. The latest chapter of this book is not finished yet. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. The novel is more complete and updated faster. Millions of novels are free to read. There are all kinds of novels that can't be found on the internet here. Gu Jiao's eyes became extremely dangerous. It better be a reasonable explanation. Otherwise, I don't care if you are my godfather or not. I will treat you as my godfather and beat you up. I will never admit that I want to beat him up. Gu Changqing was in an absolute coma at this moment. The state preceptor came to the bedside and looked at him with a complicated expression. He sighed and said, "This is his own decision." "Make it clear," Gu Jiao said lightly. The state preceptor said, "He was hit by an Hun's sword when he was defenseless. His foundation was destroyed, his dantian was damaged, and countless veins were broken. You are a doctor. You should understand that he is basically a cripple at this point." Gu Jiao didn't refute this point. As early as when she operated on Gu Changqing, she already knew how bad his situation was. Otherwise, when the state preceptor asked her what if Gu Changqing became a cripple, her answer was, "I will take care of him instead of I will cure him." From a medical point of view, Gu Changqing had no possibility of being cured. Gu Jiao asked, "So you turned him into a man of sacrifice?" The state preceptor sighed helplessly. "I said that this is his own choice. I just provided him with a plan. It is up to him whether he accepts it or not." Gu Jiao remembered the conversation that happened in this intensive care unit. She asked, "He was already awake at that time, right?" You deliberately asked me in front of him. What if he becomes a cripple? What will I do? You wanted him to hear my answer, to move him, and to make him more determined not to be a burden to me. The state preceptor opened his mouth, but didn't refute. Gu Jiao's cold eyes fell on the state preceptor's face, which was full of vicissitudes of life. You still have the nerve to say that this is his own choice? The state preceptor blocked his mouth with his fist. Ahem. All right, I admit that I did use some underhanded means, but, Gu Jiao said, you'd better not say it's for my own good, or I'll kill you right now. The state preceptor looked at her with a face full of shock and confusion, as if to say, is she really that daring? He even dared to kill the state preceptor? Forget it, I've spoiled her. A certain imperial preceptor muttered. What are you mumbling about? Gu Jiao didn't hear him clearly. The state preceptor said earnestly, I'm saying that this is the only way for him to return to normal. Although it might not succeed, it's better than turning him into a cripple. With his pride, becoming a cripple is more terrible than letting him die. Gu Jiao thought of the dream she had in Zhao country. During the battle at the border, the remnants of the previous dynasty had colluded with the Qin country's army and turned Gu Chongqing into a cripple, making him wish he was dead for the rest of his life. The state preceptor continued. So I told him that if he doesn't want to become a cripple, there's only one way. With the help of medicine, he can become a death warrior. Death warriors are originally established after death. There's a similar precedent in the state preceptor hall, but the premise is to take a poison that has no antidote. Gu Jiao paused. Is it the poison that fifth grandfather Han was poisoned with? The state preceptor nodded. That's right. That kind of poison has a 90% chance of death. If he survives it, he will have the qualification to become a death warrior. Shi Tian and An Hun also became death warriors because they were poisoned with this kind of poison. The probability of surviving after being poisoned with this kind of poison was not high, and those who survived all became death warriors except for fifth grandfather Han. Whether being poisoned and becoming a death warrior was inevitable, no one knew the answer until now. However, although fifth grandfather Han didn't become a death warrior, he had progeria. It seemed that the aftereffects of this kind of poison were indeed quite severe. The state preceptor said, that kind of poison is very strange. Most people can't survive it, and once they do, they will become abnormally strong. I call it screening. Gu Jiao frowned slightly. Screening? The state preceptor took a deep look at Gu Jiao and said, it's a kind of survival of the fittest in genes. Gu Jiao was thinking with her eyes down. She didn't notice the state preceptor's eyes looking at her. When she raised her eyes to look at the state preceptor, there was no emotion in the state preceptor's eyes. Where does this poison come from? She asked. The state preceptor said, it's the juice from the roots of a kind of purple grass, but it's very difficult to find that kind of purple grass now. It's a pity. If there is, maybe I can bring it back to study. Gu Jiao said again. Then where did the poison you gave to Gu Chongqing come from? The state preceptor said helplessly. There's only one bottle left, and I gave it all to him. Gu Jiao asked another question in the bottom of her heart. But why didn't I feel the aura of a death warrior on him? The state preceptor said, because he didn't become a death warrior. Gu Jiao asked puzzledly. What do you mean? The state preceptor smiled politely. After I gave him the medicine, I found that it had expired. Gu Jiao. So now the state preceptor continued to smile awkwardly and politely. He thought he was a death warrior. Gu Jiao again. To be honest, the state preceptor didn't expect this situation. He found that the medicine had expired the next day, and hurried to see Gu Chongqing's situation. Unexpectedly, Gu Chongqing stood by the bed with a walking stick and said excitedly to him, State preceptor, the medicine you gave is really effective. I can stand up. The state preceptor's expression at that time was unprecedented. Gu Chongqing wondered. But why? I don't feel the pain you mentioned. The state preceptor mentioned to Gu Chongqing that the process of decocting this kind of poison was no different from dying once. Then the state preceptor decisively stopped him from taking the painkillers. After 3 days of living hell, Gu Chongqing became more and more convinced that he had survived the poison. This wasn't a miracle that could be created by medicine. It was a strong willpower to protect his sister at all costs. The state preceptor sighed innocently. I saw that he was in good condition, so I didn't have the heart to expose him. He was afraid that if he exposed him, his beliefs would collapse and never recover. Gu Jiao looked at the various death warriors in her hand and asked in confusion, "Then what's with these books?" The state preceptor said truthfully, "I wrote them randomly." But it also took him a lot of effort. Just looking for the empty yellowed books and thinking of the names almost made him forget. Gu Jiao then picked up a book titled, 10 Days to Become a Qualified Death Warrior, and the corner of her mouth twitched. I was wondering why these books look so indecent. The state preceptor. With Gu Chongqing's current condition, it was more appropriate for him to continue staying in the state preceptor's hall. As for when to tell him the truth, it would depend on his recovery. Before he completely recovered, he couldn't let his beliefs collapse halfway. When they came out of the state preceptor's hall, it was already after midnight. Gu Jiao and the Black Wind King returned to the Duke and estate. The Duke and estate was very quiet. Xiaoheng didn't tell his family that Gu Jiao went to the palace to steal the monarch. He only said that she had something to do in the state preceptor's hall, and might return tomorrow. Everyone went to rest. Xiaoheng waited for Gu Jiao alone in the room. He didn't know how Gu Jiao's situation was, but according to the plan, the monarch was to be brought back to the Duke and estate. Creak. The courtyard door of Feng Courtyard was pushed open. Xiaoheng hurried out of the room. Jiao. The person who came in wasn't Gu Jiao, but Steward Zheng. Steward Zheng held a lantern and looked at Xiaoheng hurriedly coming out of the corridor. He said in surprise, "Your Highness Zhongsun, it's so late and you haven't gone to bed yet?" Xiaoheng held back his disappointment and asked calmly, "It's so late. Why are you here?" Steward Zheng pointed at the courtyard door behind him and explained, I saw that the door wasn't closed, so I thought it might be a lazy servant, so I came in to take a look." Xiaoheng said, "I told them to leave the door open." Steward Zheng was confused for a moment and asked, "Aren't Lord Xiao and young Master Gu coming back tomorrow?" They were the only ones in the courtyard who went out. Xiaoheng said calmly, "They might come back earlier. It's getting late, Steward Zheng, you should go and rest. There's nothing here." Steward Zheng smiled. Yes, I'll take my leave." Steward Zheng had only taken a few steps when he turned back and asked Xiaoheng, "Your Highness Zhongsun, are you not used to living here? Duke said that you can go directly to his courtyard. His courtyard is spacious, and there are too many people in Feng Courtyard." Xiaoheng said seriously, "No, I'm living very well in Feng Courtyard." Steward Zheng smiled embarrassedly. He thought, "You are the dignified eldest grandson of the emperor. Why don't you live with your own uncle, but live with a few people from the Zhao kingdom?" "Okay, if there's anything, please don't hesitate to tell me." This time, Steward Zheng really left and didn't come back. Time passed little by little. Xiaoheng was still sitting at first, but he quickly stood up. He looked at the window for a while, and then walked around the room for a while. Finally, when he was about to enter the palace to inquire about the news, there was movement outside the courtyard again. Xiaoheng didn't wait for someone to open the door. He walked out in large strides and opened the courtyard door. Soon after, he saw Long Yi standing at the door. The latest chapter of this book is not finished. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. Novels are updated at a faster rate. Millions of novels are free to read. Novels with connotations that can't be found on the internet are all available here. https://www.zhhbqg.com/89642_89642826/1061125992. HTML Genius remembers this website's address in 1 second. www.zhhbqg.com Bikugo mobile reading website. zhhbqg.com. You're tuning in to the Earbook Haven YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.